Quick disclaimer for this video for you guys, just to let you know there's not going to be any actual video capture from the podcast. Unfortunately, we weren't able to upload it, so it'll be all gameplay video, as well as just kind of some screenshots and screen grabs from the podcast when we were recording. I hope you guys are still able to enjoy, so take care. Hey everybody, it's Jamonster back again with Oppas Gaming, and today I'm here joined with a few of my teammates to bring you guys a little podcast that we want to bring to you guys. It's just going to be us discussing some things for all the different TCGs that we play, some of the stuff that we cover on the channel, going through all the newest topics and all the news and stuff going for all the games. So today we're going to be really focusing on going from Digimon, One Piece to Battle Spirits. We're going to go through, introduce all of my different teammates that you guys haven't seen on the channel as consistently as myself. So yeah, we're going to start introducing everybody. We're going to start with Matt first.
All right, yeah. So I'm Matt Riley. I currently play Battle Spirits mostly, but I've played One Piece, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh as well. So yeah, I'm lucky, glad to be here.
Absolutely, glad to have you. After that, we also have another one of my teammates. You guys are a little bit more familiar. This is going to be Tusa. He's been on the channel a few times. So Tusa, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Tusa Ying. I primarily play Digimon and One Piece. Used to play a little bit of Battle Spirits, but not too much.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end a little bit. And then last but not least, we have our other teammate, Eric. You're one of the OG Oppas, so do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey, I'm Eric Reese. I primarily play Digimon. Contrary to everyone else, I actually play a bit of Pokemon TCG as well, both in paper and online. And I've also got some backgrounds in Yu-Gi-Oh! And played a bit of One Piece as well, and One Piece 1 primarily.
Yeah, I think that you definitely have the most colorful background out of everybody here. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we all love Bandai games. It's kind of the one thing that really brought us all together kind of in the first place, is playing games like Digimon specifically. And it's just something we've all branched out with. So we have some very colorful conversations when we're talking about different TCGs, right? Because we just get so many different inputs from everybody. So getting into everything, how often do you guys get to play TCGs? That's going to be my first question. So just talking about like how much do you play during the week when you're just kind of like relaxing, or just like consistently going throughout? Because all of us have different kind of tops and different accolades when we're talking about card games. So just in a regular week, how often do you guys play? I know for myself, I generally...
That's a great question.
No, yeah, I generally play. I try to play every single day. That's kind of my big thing with webcams. I think that's the biggest thing that introduced me to getting back into TCGs, and having that be kind of such a big impact. It makes it really easy to kind of connect with your friends when you can't make it someplace to meet up with your friends and stuff. It's usually pretty easy to jump on like a Discord call. So with the introduction of like webcam gaming and like webcam tournaments on TCGs and stuff like that, I try to play kind of every single day. But it's one of those things, right, where just life can get in the way. If you don't have energy after work, or if you don't have time before work and stuff like that, it definitely gets in the way. But I would say that playing TCGs for me is like my biggest like hobby, I would say, as far as like gaming especially. So
Yeah, every day is kind of a lot for me. I feel like when I play a game, it's like in my head, and so even when I'm not playing, I feel like I'm thinking about it a lot. So yeah, I think I try, if I'm like really playing a game consistently, I try to do like twice a week, like get to the card shop. Because like, I think the Discord call is like, yeah, great innovation on like how we can play and interact as players, but like truthfully, like me being in person and being able to test, and just the environment as well, like that camaraderie, I think it really helps me getting involved into the game more. If anyone knows me, I also am very grateful to be lent many cards, because I come in and out of games. Look, I just think it's always very helpful when you're in person and able to talk with people, and you just kind of get to see, like, you can go table to table, see what people are playing, see what other people you may not know are playing. So I try to do twice a week, at least in the card shop.
No, that makes sense. I know that speaking on like when I got into TCGs again, it was really big in 2020 when the Digimon card game released. But have you been playing on and off for a little while now? Because I know that you said you were playing Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, I try to step back into Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's just so expensive right now. So after we went to Iowa, I just kind of was taking a break. But I definitely want to hop back into Digimon with BT13. I think Beelzmon's still playable, and I want to play some other decks in Digimon. So probably gonna hop back into play some Digimon.
No, for sure. BT13 is pretty hot right now. I'm not gonna lie. I've got way more decks than I've ever had built or haven't had built for a long time. Just kind of built and ready to play, right? So, Tusa, I know you have a brother that you play decently with, right? As far as testing goes.
Yeah. Yeah, Mochi, yeah. Usually depending is it the competitive season? If it's the competitive season, we're just gonna grind out the game, see what we can get through, whether it's Digimon or One Piece. Rotate between the two, whichever we get bored of fastest, because you can get burned out just playing one single game for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we just try to go to the card shop like at least 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe if we feel just like hanging out, playing fun decks, or if we actually want to actually practice for like regionals or Ultimate Cup or One Piece Treasure Cups,
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense for
sure. Yeah, it really depends on the season, Like, are we burnt out? Are we trying to get some wins? Are we trying to win something?
Yeah.
We're just there for fun.
No, I get that. I think that's a good point too. Is like, what season is it? Is it the competitive season where you're having to like play in a lot of like regionals or trying to get your invite for something, or is it just kind of a casual season? But how about you, Eric?
Yeah, as for me, I get to the shop like once or twice a week. Usually, I aim for. I think contrary to me, I'm really not a big fan of webcam, as probably all you guys know. I really dislike playing on it. Competitively, I dislike it for a lot of integrity reasons. And with friends, I don't. With friends, I don't dislike it that much, but also just because I dislike it competitively, I don't have the biggest urge to play in webcam. I think, contrary to a lot of you guys, I wasn't into card games for a long time. I played when I was younger, like elementary school to early middle school age, and then stopped for a long period. And since that, my crutch has always been digital card games, and I still keep that to this day. So I'm always playing 1 to 2 digital card games casually as I go. So I play a lot of Legends of Runeterra recently. Just whether it's Path of Champions, like it's a single player version, just so I can play something casual, step in and out whenever I want from doing something around the house, or a little bit of competitive in it. And Master Duel and Pokemon TCG Live are both games where I can pretty much play almost the full game. TCG Live is the exact current meta, although there's a bunch of bugs. We can maybe have a future episode about that if we ever have a Pokemon special.
No, we can definitely chat about Pokemon.
Master Duel got me back into Yu-Gi-Oh! And actually taught me how to play the game since my GX era learning. But yeah, so like I play some type of digital game probably usually if I'm not going out to the shop, as a kind of way to keep my mind just playing card games, as choice games. But otherwise, the shops maybe once or twice depending on my availability, and then more if I'm really into the set. Sometimes I try to get out in the work week depending on work availability, but usually it's just the weekends that I'm free.
Okay, I got you. So touching on the first note that you made on how you're not that big of a webcam fan, let's dive into that. Why not? Why don't you enjoy webcam as much? Because for me, it's such a big thing. But what is it? So you mentioned integrity and everything like that, but if you just want to evaluate.
Yeah, so I want to lead off with that. I got into Digimon TCG, like just starting it before I even met any of you guys, just playing it online, even through webcams, where I just went to a random Twitch streamer that was streaming it and did a pickup game with them after buying some cards, and just doing it for fun.
For sure.
And hadn't met anyone here, hadn't tried to go to a shop, and like even did some trades where I traded some pulls, got really good value in cards and stuff to get started. So I'm a big fan. I'm definitely a proponent where I think webcam's huge for the game, and I definitely respect people who do it. For me, though, kind of I think going back to Matt, the camaraderie just isn't the same when you're playing webcam, where even though I'm chatting with my friends and have just as much fun, it's not where you can just sit there and have the side conversations where you can have everyone sitting behind the back going into the corner whispering to each other about what's going on in the game while we're just all doing it and reacting like mad because we're seeing people's hands and walking back and forth to see what's going on, but trying to mask certain draws to not like react to what a draw happens to know what's going on, so you're not giving the opponent information. That's just like the greatest part of the game, whether you're inside of it playing it and that's what's happening around you, or you're the spectator happening and that watching in the undefeated game 3 to finish out the round. It's just a really great part of the game that I enjoy, and it really makes me happen to enjoy it. And when I play on webcam, if it's with a bunch of friends, it's cool, but then you kind of feel like you kind of have to hold back and let the people playing the game be the game playing, so you're just in a watching phase, and so I don't really get to feel like I'm interacting with other people. And if I want to go interact with people, then I'm not really watching the game, or I'm playing my own, So it's very solo 1v1, and if I'm doing that, usually I'm just going to have a one-on-one interaction a lot of the time. I either want to be doing a big chill, or I'll just kind of want to do something relaxing and just watch something on the chill so I can recharge my social batteries, and then, go out and do stuff with people when I'm doing stuff with a bigger group, usually is what I like to do.
Okay.
But now, integrity, though, we've all seen plenty of blatant cheats that, heavily infected tournaments that got caught later in the tournament and was blatant stuff, but there's no way to take it back. And the entire outcome of the tournament was changed. You can never really think what really happened. obviously the people who won it still deserved it, and they did the best they could, and like it's not like they don't deserve the wish to have the prize taken away. But anyone who maybe played that person beforehand or afterwards, they don't know what's going on, even if they didn't cheat against them. And to me, the thought of someone cheating against me just makes me not want to play, because I don't feel like I'm going to have as much fun with that lingering in my mind, especially in a competitive mindset. I loved playing at Nationals. I went in person. It was great. If there was more regional events in person, I'd probably try and do them more often. But that's just really not a thing for Digimon. But, the online webcams, it just, it's the best prizing too. And I don't feel it breeds the best. It doesn't breed the best, I feel like, integrity level environment. There's definitely great players that win consistently that are, never cheat. Like example, Tusa. Tusa has tons and tons and tons of top 8s, top 32s. And, I definitely know he doesn't cheat because he whips me in person just as easily.
It's true.
For sure.
There's all these great players, and it's not necessarily about them. It's more about me, where I'm just like, I just don't feel the urge to it. Because if I ever found out someone cheated and I lost a tournament and I was on the run of my life, I would want to stop playing the game for a long while, just because I was so upset probably about what could have been, and just like the heartbreakingness of that compared to feeling great about my run and going X2 in the end to not get my run when I was X1 going into the final round or whatever. But regardless, it's for a certain person.
No, I totally respect all that. Touching on like the first part that you said, I think that I completely agree with like how much the camaraderie and how much like playing in person is just like the way to go. It feels so much better than playing on webcams. Webcams do have that convenience, and it just still has like my heart is probably my favorite way to play is honestly webcams because it's so convenient. But touching on the integrity of the tournament, I think that it's really about how you feel about like the cheating thing. So like how you said that like if you were on the run of your life and you would be just like absolutely soul crushed if you found out somebody cheated against you. I think that for me, I did take a step back, and I know like it's like this for a lot of our teammates because we've talked about this before, but taking a step back and just being like, at this point, we have played, right? Because we've been playing webcams since they started, right? Since the first Digimon webcam that came out, that was something that like I participated in. I think you might have participated in either the first one or second one or whatever. But we've been playing them for so long. We've played so many of them that at this point, we've all ran into cheaters. We've lost to cheaters. We've won to cheaters. We've beaten cheaters that we didn't know were cheating. We've lost to cheaters that we didn't know were cheating, right? And it's just kind of all a part of the game. We all have really good topping placings, right? It's not like we're out here just getting scraped up in a tournament. So it's just one of those things where it's kind of, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You can't catch every cheater. And it's one of those things that it really just comes down to integrity. But it does come down to how you feel about it. If you come down after a tournament and you're obsessing about your round 7 player and his camera turning off, and then what that could have meant and stuff like that, I think that can sour your feeling for playing a card game for sure. But I think that if you're just kind of like realistic with yourself about it, and for me, it just doesn't matter. If my opponent's got to cheat to beat me in a webcam tournament, you know what? All the power to you. Whatever, man. I'm not gonna let it affect me all too much. I enjoy these webcams a lot, and it really is my favorite kind of way to jump into these events and stuff like that, because traveling for events is expensive. It's just super, super expensive until we get that old school Konami style of just bringing tournaments to stores that are local and big that people can just go to. Just getting to places is so much. So being able to play in events is super important to me as a player. So I guess I'm just super thankful for having the option for webcams and having them around. I don't want to see them go anywhere, but I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I think they're great. Like, right before we went to Ohio for Battle Spirits, like we had a couple of tournaments, and I was able to play, because no one plays Battle Spirits here. So
Yeah,
it's hard
seriously.
to get practice in. So that was really helpful. And even though I do not like webcam tournaments, it's more of like, I hate staring, sitting in my room on my computer for 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of it for me. Because for the cheater thing, the last time I played in a Yu-Gi-Oh! ICS, I got cheated. So cheaters are everywhere, and that was far more frustrating.
Yep.
It took far much more of my time. I was way more upset
Mm-hmm.
in person to be cheated. But I think that is really frustrating, and you can't really do anything about it too. Like if someone's gonna cheat you, they're gonna do it.
Yep.
In person or not. But I get what Eric is saying, and I definitely I definitely still will always prefer if I had the option playing in person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely get all the pros, and I see what Eric is saying though too.
I think the big
I
thing.
do that.
No, go ahead.
I'm definitely I'm really spoiled by having a thriving Digimon scene in the local, so I think that definitely has molded my opinion a lot. As what I just wanted to throw in. So I 100% agree, and that's why I think I'm a big fan of webcam. So for a lot of people that enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing is that a lot of people are going to feel the same way as both of us, right? Both sides of the spectrum. There's a ton of people that feel it on both ways. But I think it really just kind of comes down to, like, you guys have been playing TCGs for a really long time consistently. And I think that you guys have that feeling of that old school game, right? Of just going to regionals in person and just like experiencing that. I think you guys really have a lot of that, like, just in your player, just like what you guys enjoy, right? And I think that a lot of newer players will get the other opposite side of the spectrum, because we don't have that these days, right? If somebody started playing card games in 2020 or 2021, they would never have had that level of hype for an in-person yet, right? Because there just hasn't. So it's just a lot to, I think it's just really an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people are going to fall on both sides of the spectrum, where it's just going to be, it's just how you feel at the end of the day, really and truly, right? But
that's a good point. I didn't think about that. I definitely like have so many, especially pre-COVID, of like so many memories of like, I've been to 5 nationals for Yu-Gi-Oh! Traveled so many times, gone to so many regionals for that. So yeah, it is more, more baked into my enjoyment of the card game. I didn't think about that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, it's just something that people like, and there's nothing wrong with liking it at all. But we were talking about BT13 and Digimon kind of in general quite a bit. But since we're in the meta right now, we talked about BT13 as kind of a shell, but since we're wrapping up EX4 going into BT13, how do you guys feel about the health of the meta? How do you guys feel going to locals and playing in potentially like an online event? Is there any decks that you guys feel like are just super, super unhealthy? For example, like how Blue Hybrids was in that Blue Hybrid meta. How do you guys feel about things just in general right now?
Eric, you play more Digimon than me right now, right? You should have better.
Want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, limited testing so far. Obviously, I haven't been doing a ton of webcam testing compared to a lot of people. But when I played in paper, I really definitely think the deck to me is going to be Shine. Everyone kind of expected it and knows it. The deck is insanely powerful. It can come out aggressively. If they hit a few Tamers and Security to start off, you can just ramp out of control in early game, so they can't really act that aggressive to you based off of that risk. Especially, when your Marcuses are coming out and they're still popping a rookie. When they hit, on your turn and potentially gaining a memory, there's just so many value plays that come into Shine. It's so efficient, I could definitely see it taking a hit, based on previous Crossheart metas, although I'm not necessarily sure they're going to do it with a deck like Shine. But even besides that, I think Royal Knights is a solid deck this format, but probably not going to be the deck to beat. I've been playtesting a good amount. It's
Royal Knights smashes Shine, though. Royal Knights is like what makes Shine not able to win every single tournament if they run into a Royal Knights player.
I agree, but I feel like that's because when you look at all the Japanese and like overseas Shine, none of them are teching for against Royal Knight. Well, like none of them are running Solarmon. None of the lists have Solarmon. I haven't seen a single overseas list that runs Solarmon. I for sure have 2 Solarmon in my Shine list. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's such a hard lockdown. I don't understand what I'm doing, but I think a lot of it for Royal Knights is it's super bricky, and it's going to be really good in locals for people playing it. It can definitely easily go 4-0 without much trouble in a local tournament, but I think it's going to have trouble taking an 8-game tournament just because it's a much more brickier deck compared to a lot of them. It's still very consistent, don't get me wrong. It's going to probably be the second best deck in the format. I feel pretty good, but I think Shine just completely beats down every other deck in the format for the most part, to such a strong degree where they just can't do anything to push back on it for most decks, that it's just gonna drive the meta around it.
I agree with that. I think it does drive the meta around it. I think it's similar to. I will say that I think it's similar to where when we got Blackboard Greymon. Was it Blackboard Greymon X? Yeah, Blackboard Greymon X and BT11 for the Nat season, right? When we thought that Blackboard Greymon was just going to be like the deck to win and be like the most powerful deck. But looking back at the format now, I think that we can all kind of say, or at least I can say, my statement is that looking at the meta, I think Blackboard Greymon was the deck that you needed a deck that was as powerful or more powerful than Blackboard Greymon to get into the meta. But then we saw decks like Crossheart doing really good. We saw Grandis show up a lot at Nats, even though I'm not sure if it made it all the way to the top cut. But you had decks like Security Control that could do things against that could do things against that iteration of Blackboard Greymon X, and there was a lot more decks in the meta that weren't talked about beforehand, right? So I think that it's like there's a deck at a power level that walls out so many other decks, right? Because, for example, Blackboard Greymon X had the way to just rupture people's tamer setups. If you had a deck that was set up around getting tamers on the board and stuff, Blackboard Greymon was just something you didn't want to see. And then going into now, I think that right now for Shine Greymon, if you have a board or a setup that's set up around having Digimon on the board, like for Bloom Lord and decks like that, where you ramp up your advantage by being on the board, I think Shine's going to tear you apart. But I think that Shine is going to be the deck that is going to be the defining deck, and I think it's going to be a lot more decks are going to have to play around what Shine does, but I don't think it's going to be impossible to smash Shine for the format. I'm going to be interested to see how many Shines win events for the format.
I think Shine just top of the event, like, not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
The real question, though, is what's the best purple deck?
There's so many things.
I want to hear about your thoughts on Belphemon, Jamaid, because from what I've been seeing, it sounds like Belphemon's supposed to be the best deck in the format for purple. You know, Beelzemon I think is still really good. I don't think the Itmon hit actually hit it that hard.
I agree.
With what we've been really seeing, it doesn't affect the deck that much. In some cases, it slows it down to a degree that so it doesn't hurt itself as much because it was kind of going overboard a bit at some points when people would play it. But yeah, Jamaid, I'd like to hear what you think about that a bit more.
Belphemon, so the best purple deck in the format, for it possibly being Belphemon, I think Belphemon has the highest ceiling, but it takes a lot of repetition. You really have to play through you have to play a really good game going all the way through the game, and then finishing the game needs to be very, very clean on your side. You have to be really on top of your resources, and then the next thing that's going to be the most important thing for Belphemon is your deck list. I think that it just takes a lot of tailoring, and you really need to find that right amount of gizmos to put in the deck, the right amount of option text to put in the deck, the right amount of purple memory boost. There's just like actually so many floating pieces that like come up and go, right? Where you'll be winning all the time, and then you'll be like, damn, I don't have the one option to restand my Belphemon to go for game more consistently, or I don't have, the extra Eismon in my deck to go for Belphemon consistently. So I think that we're still trying to discover the correct list for Belphemon, but I think that it has a lot of potential, especially playing into kind of a more standard playstyle for Shine. I think that if you are super aggressive with your Shine list and you can go wide with like level 3s and 4s, Belphemon just won't get on the board fast enough for you. But if you're a single stack deck that can't be affected by your opponent's Shines and can like wall your opponent's attacks out through the advantage that they get and then wipe all their 5s and lower on their next turn, you have a really good theoretical matchup into like the biggest deck into the meta. So I think it just is going to take some more time and a lot of practice on Belphemon though, for sure.
Your Royal Knight matchup's not good though.
No, it's definitely not.
It's not good.
It takes too much time. They have too much time to go for their super explosive play, and your defense is not defensive enough because they have too many cards that can get your Vilemons off the board. Your blockers come out, and there's no such thing as a right time for your blockers to come out because no matter when they come out, your opponent's either going to raid into them, pop it with the DP reduction that they have, or whatever other way, right? Summon a Omnimon at the correct time to pop the correct card. So there's a lot of ways that they have to get around you.
Yeah, and once you're set up to win, they'll just alpha. And assuming they have it, they just alphamon you 1 to 2 turns in a row, and you're just sitting there and can't swing, can't do anything, and they have all the time in the world to get finishing set up to go for the Omni kill, and they'll just OTK you. And once they go for Omni, it's you just have nothing really you can do.
Facts. It can get pretty rough out here. It can be rough.
I feel confident about this.
About the Belphi.
Okay.
It's great into most other decks. It just has. I mean, the thing is, like I said though, Royal Knight it bricks really hard when it bricks.
Yep.
Like, and Biphoman can just kill you before you do anything in a lot of situations with Royal Knight. Because if you're not, consistently hitting good play drops and absorbing, and you can remove their board as they're doing, and they're not building up their stack, they're not hitting their options, you can kill them before they can ever go for Omni in the first place.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. No, I think there's a lot to be discovered also with the Royal Knights deck in general, because I've seen a lot of just like small techs happening back and forth, right? Just people just swapping out small cards like some of their Sistermon engine. People just going for like a 6 or 5 security, 6 swing, just finish out the game type of playstyle as well. But I think there's lots of legs left in as far as discovering that portion of the meta. But I think it's healthy. Looking at like where we ended with EX4, Shine Greymon was a huge deck in EX4. It just wasn't as consistent because they only had Ruin mode at the time, so it was kind of still a stack-based deck. I think we're looking at actually a lot of good decks because we have a teammate Newt that's been playtesting Alphamon. Shout out to Newt because he's been smashing everybody. It doesn't matter what deck you bring out. Alphamon's just coming out here looking like BT9 Part 2. And that's just something, that's just like one of the decks, right? I also have a Jessamon deck. I don't think I've lost to Royal Knight, or maybe I have lost like one or a couple matches to Royal Knights yet. But it's just like so many of these decks that aren't necessarily right on your radar, or maybe not even necessarily just from this set, that are just like super, super strong right now. And I think the list like goes on because there's some decks that people have been testing so far. But right now,
I just gotta say quick about Newt. Bless that man's heart. He has played Shine Greymon in every format up until BT13. Shine Greymon or Rise Next, I swear. Since Rise
for
Next
real.
Antibody has been released, he has played a variant of the deck on release in every format.
And then when he gets
on
tier 1,
BT13, he's playing Alphamon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on?
That's funny.
Alright, sorry, go ahead, Jermaine.
No worries. I was gonna ask you guys so we kind of talked about kind of like some of the decks that we've been playtesting and stuff that we're looking forward to. We've talked a lot about Royal Knights and Shine Greymon. Are there 3 decks that you guys think that are gonna be the most like the strongest decks in the format? Or what is everybody's 3 decks? Eric, you've already kind of listed off yours because you started off with Shine and Royal Knights. But if you could tag on one thing, we'll start off with you, Eric. What would the 3rd deck be for the like really setting the pace for what the meta can do? Because I think there's a few of them.
I think really what's actually gonna be the mix-up, and I'm surprised it doesn't see as much play, but I think it really is probably one of the best, if not the 3rd best, is Hunter. I think Hunter is still extremely strong. It level sets and it just stops so many decks dead in their track. It definitely gets a little bit worse because there's a lot more 7 focus in the format, but a lot of the 7s go back to 6 at the end of turn, and you can still just deal with the 6 pretty consistently with superior mode. And if some of the old decks that this just stops hard in the water start coming back, it's gonna get a lot of free easy wins. If people are trying to play old Examon because it has some good matchups against the newer decks, Hunter just shuts Examon down pretty hard, because if they manage to get enough Tamers to block Examon just cries as they take their Examon over and stuff it under every time, and then remove the rest of their board.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's a hard check in the format that I don't think it'll be the 3rd most in played, but I think it definitely has the power to be the 3rd best deck, when you're looking at what it actually does to the format as a whole.
I was just going to say Hunters, actually.
Oh, really? Wow. Well,
that's crazy.
Yeah, one thing to tag on
to
talk about what also makes Hunters so powerful is that they have access to the new Ace mechanic, and having that be the newest mechanic in Digimon, it's a super powerful mechanic, and you can steal games. If you start off on a quick Aristramon with a Watchmaker to get a few checks in back to back, and then you just steal that last turn from your opponent just can't do anything because if you're set up in that point, right? And it's actually so easy to steal a turn from your opponent because you're going to be Digivolving to try to get someplace to get over the board that you have already. So on that final little bit, right, they'll declare an attack and you just ace Digivolve, and it can be so disgusting. So
yeah, so I think like the 2 strongest deck, right? It's gonna be like the most popular deck, the most anticipated, the Shine Greymon deck and the Royal Knight deck. I think like the 3rd deck, which is not like on anyone's radar, it's probably Blue Flare, right? Blue Flare, will work out in the meta, and the reason why we think it's better is because both decks rely on having a digital tamer that doesn't have any sources, right? You rely on having Marcus attack in order to gain the value to evolve, and you are also relying on Royal Knight to come out and just slow on the board and just attack. And both of them, if you play Soul right, you can just stop them from progressing into that play. And the thing about Blue Flare is that Blue Flare can go for like an OTK that can't be predicted for most gameplay. Because for Royal Knights and for the Shine deck, you can honestly predict what they're going to do based on the memory and what they have set up. Whereas the Blue Flare, you can't really predict on what they would do based on what they have on the board and in their hands.
No, that's true, because I was going to ask you what made you pick Blue Flare going into the meta. But yeah, I think the big thing for me that has Blue Flare being so powerful is Sorai into Royal Knights. I think that's pretty ridiculous, because what are they going to do?
I don't know, it's so slow too, because both security is practically free if you're jamming. Because without anything like a security bomb, you're just swinging right through for free.
No, it's very true. No, I like that pick. I like that pick quite a bit.
When I came back a little bit and played some Beelzebub before I got hit, I felt like Hunters was really, I felt like it was a sticky and kind of an annoying deck to play against. I couldn't get the hang of it. I had a I had built it, but I just didn't put that much time into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it got hit at all, really, right? And so I'm thinking, like, why is no one playing this? I feel like the deck is still good.
It is.
And it's just kind of got outsped by some things. So I feel like, yeah, it could still be a really good contender for just like showing up and doing the things it's doing. And like you said, it has access to this new mechanics. So I think that's another thing that's just gonna make it strong.
No,
like,
for sure.
like be like a surprise factor enough that like if people aren't like, you're saying there's so many cards in the meta, so many decks. And when you have a meta like that, like everyone prepares for the strongest deck, and then sometimes, Quartzmon is a card. That card
Very
is annoying.
true. Very true.
Right? And so, I just think that deck still would have potential to get a couple tops, I would say.
No, for sure. I like that. I like that pick a lot. And I think that agreeing on Hunters for 2 out of 4 of us, I'm playing Hunters too. So, I mean, it's really 3 out of 4 of us, right? We all agree that Hunters is super powerful. But I think that Hunters is nutty, honestly. It's just such an efficient deck. And I think that's the biggest thing. You can dump your hand in Hunters and then just draw 4 and go into your next turn, and then you draw 4 and just dump your hand again. It's just so much value, and nothing ever disappears for too long, right? Because you always have access to things from Under Tamers, from the trash, and things like that. So I think that just to be different, because I really do agree that there's a really strong blue deck. I wasn't 100% sure if Mirage Galgamon or Blue Flare was going to be stronger, but after hearing you talk about Sora, I'm really thinking about what Sora can do into the meta. That's pretty ridiculous, and I think that it definitely does have a place. But I think where I'm going to place my my third strongest deck in the meta, this isn't going to be a surprise, but I'm putting it on Bloomlord. Rosemon is ridiculous, but what's really ridiculous for Bloomlord right now is the new Yoshino Tamer. The fact that, and as well as the new Inheritables, right? You can reduce your Bloomlord. The big play is going up into Ayatar and raising out your Ayatar, and then you can rest Ayatar self, right, to play out a Digimon. But when you're Digivolving into your Bloomlord, you can go into a Bloomlord for 1. Because you have two Inheritables that can reduce your cost, and you have a Tamer that can gain a memory. And then the Tamer gaining you a memory is just X memory for X amount of Tamers on board. So going into a Bloomlord for 1, building a really wide board, resanding your Bloomlord, getting big checks, and then every Bloomlord is just Hammerspark on crack. It's just Hammerspark times 2. You're gaining so much memory. And a lot of the plays for Bloomlord and building these ridiculous boards that people couldn't deal with came alongside HPD being in hand. But now that we have so many ways to make a Bloomlord free and make a Hydramon cost 3 or 2 or 1, who needs an HPD when I can build a board for 1 memory and not save the 1 memory? Bloomlord can be ridiculous right now, and I think that the top end, getting access to the burst mechanic where you can play 1 or 2 Rosemon. You can go into a Rosemon for cheap, especially with that new level 4 that just reduces your level 6s as well. It's just, there's a lot of reduction. Green just doing green things. You're building a board. You're still going to be weak to things like Death X and stuff, but when you can go into 3 level 6s in 1 turn, that's pretty tight. It's going to be pretty solid. So I think that Bloomlord definitely has a fight, and I think that you have legs against decks like Royal Knights, right? Because you can be fast. If I just go Digivolve all the way up my line pretty quick, and I don't need a Tamer or anything like that, but I can raise up, swing at your security for 16k and 3 checks, right? And then you have 1 turn to respond or a couple turns to respond. I can get there against a deck like that. Shine Greymon, on the other hand, is a nightmare. That one is a little bit rough when they're just popping all your extra little Digimon and stuff like that. But I think that Bloomlord definitely is going to be one of those decks where you can have legs. It's going to be aggressive, and it's definitely going to be a nice check into the meta, kind of going in general. And obviously, I'm a green player, so I got to pick one of them, right? And Bloomlord really, really got some additional legs here. So one thing that I really wanted to talk about, though, too, since we're talking about EX4 and BT13, and this one is a way more kind of out there topic, but looking at metas and sets and kind of like really thinking back, since we've all been playing Digimon for so long, we have this thing in Digimon where we'll get a main set and then an EX set and then a main set. So for example, right now the rotation that we're on is we got BT12, EX4, and now we're on BT13, and we're looking at having a long meta with BT13 going into BT14 with nothing in between. The thing that you notice with a release schedule like this is that towards the end of most longer metas, and that's between a main set and a main set with no EX in between, it gets really, really stale and really, really dead towards the end of the meta. Nobody's going to locals. Nobody's playing in bigger events. People are not playing in the later bigger events because the later bigger events are on the same time as pre-releases. The new stuff coming out. People just really care about the new stuff. How do you guys feel about that consistent that consistent release schedule, do you guys want to see like more EX4 or more EX sets, or do you guys feel comfortable with, because it can get expensive when you have a main set, EX set, main set, that's a really expensive rotation. But on the other hand of it, in my opinion, it's a really fun rotation. I think that's the one we're having the most fun and the most innovation with like decks, because it's a shake up. You don't get dulled out playing, you know, your Bloom Lord deck or your whatever deck, because right in the middle of right when you're going to be getting tired of it, there's something new for you to try to play with. So I just kind of want to get some of your guys' opinions, because it is something that's a little bit out there, but it's something to talk about, because I know it's one thing for store owners and stuff like that too, right, to have an opinion on stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'll start with that. So the thing about EXX is that honestly speaking, they're not really that competitive. It's more like here's a little side thing you can play with.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe here's some bonus to help you out. The thing that Bandai has problem with is the timing in which they drop the EX set, right? Sometimes they just drop it in the middle of we just start BT13, they just drop EX for like 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks from now, right? Like back when BT10 and EX3 came out, the intervals between those two were so short that no one wanted to play EX3 because we were just started on BT12 or no BT10.
Yeah, BT10. Yeah.
And the thing is that if they time it better, it would work out, right? If you push the EX, was it EX4 we just had recently? Or EX3? Whatever that set was, right? If they push that later on and then just extended BT3 till down the road, it wouldn't feel like we have such a long format, and we would feel like we have different formats but in good intervals, instead of like we just had like 2 weeks of BT13 and then we go straight into EX4 and whatnot, you know?
No, it's totally fair.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, you know, no matter how you think about it, so if you do it where you make an EX set and you make the overall cycle so it's always the same amount of time between every set, you know, and an EX set's treated as regular set cycle-wise, but it's just a lesser cards, then you've got the situation where the set, you know, the EX set shakes it up. Like Tusa said, they're never game-changing sets for the most part. There's a small handful, you know.
Well, one thing I do want to note on that. One thing I do want to note, we did get Examon out of an EX set, we did get Machine Dramon out of an EX set, but we also got Machine Dramon support out of an EX set. And noting on the Machine Dramon thing, Machine Dramon was like a tier 2 deck that everybody thought was, that actually definitely made its way into tier 1 by the end of the meta, because it was stomping everybody, right? Yeah. Red Hybrid just couldn't play the game against Machine Dramon. So we have had some meta impact.
But half the cards in Machine Dramon are also in normal sets, you know. More than half are normal set cards. Even like the SR is like X Antibody's a normal set card, right? You know,
okay, yeah.
Which is one of the most busted cards in it. Isn't Analog Man a normal set card too?
Nope, that one is from EX1.
That's EX3?
Yeah. With that was EX1 or Analog Youth, you mean? Oh, Analog Man.
No,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep, that was a set. That was that's a good question actually. I can't tell if it was a set or a side set, but
I think that came with the same set as the rare Chaos Dramon. So like, you know, that set got a lot of it. You know, what was the other one you said besides Chaos? Examon, I will say, Examon would have been a way huger impact on the format if it wasn't for the abysmal secret pull rates of that set, where no one could build the deck because it was so expensive.
It was just expensive.
And, you know, the deck was good, but it wasn't really worth it because everything else was so worthless in the set besides getting Examon. You know, like that hurt it. I think that would have made it a much more thing. You know, like Examon and, you know, really D Reaper, I think, are the two decks that were huge. Because D Reaper came with an EX set too. That was EX2, wasn't it? Am I remembering that correctly, or was that a normal set?
EX.
That's a good question.
EX2.
It could have been
EX2, right?
Yeah, Digital Hazard or something like that.
Yeah, so like, EX2 D Reaper, that was, I think, the first time, you know, it was a second EX set, and they're like, dang, they dropped a whole deck that was busted. You know, changed the format. Thankfully, it was a short period of time, and then stuff released it got overpowered to a small degree, you know, but it was still good. And Examon, you know, they said die itself, but yeah, you know, it does look a check of it. It's maybe one deck is the whole thing. That's kind of the point. It's at best you get one deck, and maybe it revitalizes an old deck. So a lot of people still end up playing the same thing, and like money-wise too, it's not a money issue for me, but a lot of people, they don't want to drop on a subset where there's really low value unless they hit a really good hit.
Yeah,
and they don't want most of the cards in the set competitive-wise because they're not building a full deck out of it if they don't want the one deck that's worth it. So, you know, I don't think they sell that well, and we kind of see that at the shop, you know, comparatively too. Until a later SR comes expensive, and then everyone's opening it, then, you know, which that's the Digimon effect. You know, there's one SR that always comes $10+ from every old set that was dirt cheap when the set dropped.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Beelzemon.
Beelzemon then.
Mirage Galgamon now.
Galgamon, expensive. Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Shine Greymon as well. Yep, that was dirt when it first came out.
Expensive. The Metal Greymon from Blue Flare. That card's like $15. Was like $15.
Oh, yeah.
$15 at one
Yeah, I
point.
forgot about that one. That was a money card.
Yeah, right before EX4 dropped. You know, like it's the weird effect from Digimon. There's always one SR. It's always an SR too.
Yeah.
You know, the secrets never pop back up. It's always the SRs.
Okay. Well, even if they don't have quite meta relevant decks, I think one of the nice things though is getting the shake up in the meta, because even if you aren't buying the set yourself to play a new deck, you're still playing the deck that you were playing before, but you're playing with new matchups, right? If an EX set does introduce a deck into the meta, or even if it doesn't, I think there's something to be said for that, right? Because shaking up a meta is difficult, right? We've seen that kind of all the way throughout all the games really lifespan so far. Is at the end of a meta, people are just stale, they're bored, and they don't want to keep on playing the same, so people start trying things and trying like weird decks. But I do like the fact that in the EX sets we get a little bit of mix up, but maybe it's not impactful enough. Would you guys rather see more impactful cards come out, like a more powerful secret rare in EX sets to draw more people to it? Because that would drive the price of them up as well.
Impactful. The good thing with EX is that the pull rate is a little bit better.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Secret.
Yeah,
it's like the only good thing about it.
Yeah, I will say, I think kind of to Tusa's point, I think EX sets we'd have a lot more of a favorable view if we didn't have so much issues with Bandai historically about their printing release schedule and sticking to it. I think that's actually made a lot of us jaded about specifically EX sets, because it's hurt a lot of formats and we felt like we didn't get to experience correctly. You know, kind of you mentioned the experience Tusa was talking about a lot. I think if we'd never had that issue, we'd probably be a lot more okay with EX sets based if they were on a set schedule. And I can kind of see that shifting over time as they've been more consistent recently. And, you know, it's not as bad now because we are having a decent amount of time. Like, EX4 had a decent amount of time. It wasn't any crazy, but it was like a month and a half in between. It was the midway, I think, between the sets. So,
yeah, not
too bad. But it kind of will depend on how they go forward with EX sets. If they continue to make them supplemental one set, it's probably not the end of the world because, like you said, it's a nice mix-up. But it'll always have to be a fine line, because I think actually if they make the sets too impactful, it's going to make players unhappy because it's going to overly shift
the Yu-Gi-Oh effect, right?
Yeah, and like I think, you know, as much as I will get bored of a set at the end, I think you need 3 months of a meta to a degree to like just play out. That's kind of the set. If people are going to invest, that's usually what they're investing on in most card game sets as a meta. And you know, you can get bored, and sometimes it's great and you don't get bored until the end, and a lot of times you do get bored early, and that should just be a design to make the sets last longer, comparative to making more decks that people want to play later in the format compared to the top decks, comparatively to just printing more cards.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let me spin it like this and ask you guys this version of the question. Looking at what we've said so far about how EX sets are in the meta, and then let's talk a little bit about One Piece really quickly. OPO2 was absolutely terrible at the very end, and I think that's something that everybody can agree on here, because none of us really played. I think, Tuesday, you might have played in some of the webcam events at the end of the format. Yeah, but it was a wrap on that format, right? There's so many people complaining about it, so many people that were kind of like flopping back and forth. It was a weird set. It started off with Green Kinemon. I think Juan took like one of the very first events with first place, the Green Kinemon. You follow that up with a slew of red decks just coming into the format and really dominating in the mid to late end part of the format. And then going into the very, very late part of the format, you saw Green come back with Green Film Kid coming out to fight the Whitebeard decks that were just putting a lot of cards on board. You saw Green Supernova Kid come back, and Supernova Archetype and the Engine come back to also fight the Film Engine. So it was a decent mix-up and just kind of some player innovation towards the end of it. But at the end of the day, a lot of us just weren't playing the game because it wasn't fun to play the same decks for so long, right? So looking at the format, do you think that if Bandai were to introduce like an EX set in One Piece, do you think that could be something that could help fix that problem, specifically the dullness of the format?
Definitely would, because the one thing that One Piece lacks right now is card diversity. Every deck is pretty much playing the same list, and it's all playing the same cards. And since you're restricted to a certain color, your card pool is very small, whereas in Digimon, you can play a variety of different colors. You can get as creative as you want. Every deck might not even be the same. It might be the same deck, but there's some text that no one works for.
No, for sure, for sure. No, that's a good point. And I think that one thing, touching on the One Piece part of it, One Piece specifically, looking at like bringing this archetype or this release structure to One Piece, I think the other thing that it could benefit from is just a little bit of mix up, right? We just need a few more leaders in the deck or in the game, so it's not just like one core pit of like red leaders that are just dominating, or just one color that's dominating. Because I think that you need diversity so that you can create counters and stuff. Like we were talking about with the Digimon meta, right? One of the best things is that you do have these 3 decks that are at the top, but there are a couple of decks right below them that they just can't beat, and those are where you're going to see some really cool mix-ups in the meta. And I think that's something that One Piece needs. Maybe not needs, right? Because it's not like the game died in OPO2. It's just that it slowed down a bit. But I think for player enjoyment, I think that players would enjoy quite a bit seeing a little bit more from Bandai for releases, right? Seeing like an EX set that comes out as an in-between point between, like, let's say it's between OPO 4 and OPO 5, or OPO 3 and OPO 4. I think that's going to do really big for keeping things fresh, because we just need something, right? Like Tusa said, we need some card diversity.
Yeah, you really need to figure out a way to make the game less stale, and like you said, just limiting like the card pool by what you can play, by the restricting by the colors that you can play in your deck. There's only so many good cards in the game. There's just not enough cards, and to make it diverse and to make them that are good. There's not enough cards that are viable, right? Into making it good. And so, yeah, I think with time, it's just one of those things. But yeah, it took so long for these sets to come out, and compared to other games, it felt really stale to me. Yeah, and just kind of in that same vein of like how you were saying of like not only like side sets, because like in Yu-Gi-Oh, when you have a side set, it's really all about like a chase card, right? It's like a really expensive card, is right at the top, and every other card is like dirt cheap.
Yeah,
which I think gets people buying it, and it's also like gets the casual players liking those different things. Like when you guys are talking about side sets, I'm thinking Commandramon. That is a side deck. It's like one of my favorite decks.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And I think that was very viable. I had a lot of success with that deck, right? And
for sure.
And it was cheap, right? Which let me feel like a little better coming in and playing that deck and playing the game again. And same with Beelzemon. Beelzemon was another. I know you said that, but Beelzemon was not only a side deck set, but tier 0 side deck set. Like, right? Like this deck
super
was
strong,
mega good. So I think there just needs to be a balance of supplementing decks that are out to change it up more so, and I think they do. I think Digimon does a good job of that. And the side sets, they have like they're gorgeous. The cards,
yeah.
Like at least if anything, the cards you're getting, like they're beautiful cards. Like you can't deny that. Like I feel like they look better than the main deck, main set cards sometimes.
For sure.
So I think Digimon does a good job in balancing that. Where I feel like in Yu-Gi-Oh, I feel like I never really got that same level
of like balance.
Balance and like playing for the players.
Yep.
Making a set for the players to have. So yeah.
Eric, how about you? How much One Piece are you playing right now?
I'm playing none right now. I built Zoro and bought my Whitebeards from Muchi, actually, Tusa's brother, in One Piece 2. Got it built, never played it once. The deck's still sitting in the back of my backpack, never been pulled out besides once to borrow one of our friends' Rush Oil I still haven't gotten back. But I've actually kind of been thinking about I kind of want to talk about, like the One Piece, does it need more like, more stuff coming out in a single set? And I think I've realized, because we all know that Digimon's a very archetype-based game. Like you're building around certain combos, making stuff synergy together. That's all it is. One Piece, I feel like there's some synergy, but it's much more of a numbers game just due to the mechanics.
Yep.
And because of that, I feel like it's going to make it really hard in the future with their set design, because all the stuff's based around being just 1K number bigger than your opponent in every situation to win the game. And that's all your math. So all your point is, how do I do my math right? How do I get the exact numbers right? Which is an entirely complex mechanic, an entire card game, very cool, and all of that. But it makes it a lot harder to print stuff that feels like where they can print multiple best decks in the format, because most of the time the math's just going to line up where there's certain numbers decks that can do math the best, in the colors, because they're so limited to colors. You have to build around that, and it prevents them from just building crazy synergies, because synergies aren't just going to be as good as numbers that can provide the exact stats you need when you need it, popped off maybe, and if they're going to make them that good, they're going to have to print so many more cards for those synergies that they're either going to basically have to build the certain decks that everyone plays, the few decks that they build the synergies for, or it's going to, I don't know, maybe they can do it right, but I feel like they need so much more to like the way One Piece decks are built. They have to print so many more cards specific for synergies in sets that it would then limit people that don't want to play combo stuff. And there's different card games for different people. One Piece doesn't necessarily need to be a game where they print an archetype and your new set comes out and you build your entire deck from your new set. That's not a thing that a lot of people like to do. Some people that they hate that. They want to slowly improve their deck as they go, and they don't want to chill out a whole bunch of money to build a new deck every time a set drops. But
I totally agree with that. I do want to note really quickly that one of the things with, since we don't have a subject here for Dragon Ball Super, this is going to be my Dragon Ball Super, just sprinkling it in here. But one of the cool things with Dragon Ball is the fact that you can go so far back into the archetype, or into the catalog, and pull out a deck that was from set 2, from set 1, and just design it and put in the new cards, put in the cards that you need to fight the current meta. And there's ways to keep everything relevant, and there's so many similarities between Dragon Ball Super and One Piece in the way that they do leader based card games. And it's like, a leader is always going to have an archetype behind it, and that's all that it needs, right? You can always add more support that'll bring it up and make it relevant. So I did just want to sprinkle that in, sprinkle that touch where it's just like when you do release something new, it is going to have to either have some backing behind it, or you're going to be able, or play it with a good amount of support. And it doesn't always need to be you're playing the game and playing the deck that just came out in the meta. Maybe there's just one line that just helps your favorite deck, that lets you bring it out from the dust from it, come out, bring it out to tournaments and do decent with it. You know what I mean? And that's where the fun comes in, and that's where the design comes in, and like building decks that are just really, really cool and really enjoyable. So just one thing to talk about that. But since we are,
I just was thinking quick. I'm sorry. I just had an interesting thought, because I think with this most recent set, they did something that I feel like is the way that they can move forward, which is being very specific, right? With this new set in One Piece, all the cards, like said, like, if you have CPO on it, like you can special it back. Like, you need to be very specific for archetypes when you give support, so it's not generic support for all cards in that color. And I think you could even start doing making a black card that says this card also counts as purple, like that, to really help flow in the game, because genuinely that will help in the terms of what you can and can't play in the colors. So one of those two.
No, for sure. Speaking of what you can and can't play, in the colors and everything like that, One Piece as a card game just got so much more free in what you can play. And this is the official rotating from talking about Digimon to One Piece here. But One Piece just got a new ban list, and I think that the ban list is actually just crazy, crazy important. It released so much tension that was on the game, because Red has been running the game since OPO2. We talked about it a second ago, where it was just the whole mid set of OPO2 was dominated by red decks. And even starting out OPO3, the strongest decks were red decks. Yellow, it was doing decent, it was cool, it's a great deck, and it's a great color, it's my main color for the set. There was one that made it to the first top cut that red was not limited in, and it's not because the color was underrepresented, it's not because the color is not strong, it's just not as efficient as red, especially when red had Rad Beam for 1 cost, Marco for 4 costs that just cycles back at 4 of, and then they had the 9 Beard is just a card that everybody knows is a problem and knows exactly why it's a problem, because you can't deal with 3 of them. 2 of them is just a little bit too much pressure. So just kind of seeing, well, really just asking, what do you guys think about the hits? Tusa, really you first, since you're playing the most One Piece, and you're the house Whitebeard player, so I want to hear a lot about how you feel about the hits and what they did.
The hits were fair, because I think Whitebeard's been it's been a leader that's been topping for way too long, and it gave Red a very good late and defensive game, because Red is, when you think of the color Red, they're a very aggro color, right? So Zoro and Newgate became more of a aggro deck, but now they became more of a mid-range deck where they can survive into the late game. And then with their Marcos, they were very sticky. They would never die, and there was never a good math number to ever hit them, because if it was too high, the mark would just hit the hit. It says Newgate was 6K, and with the Newgate leader, it became an 8K leader, so the math became harder. And it just became very unfair for most decks like Yellow, which couldn't remove those Marcos and hit those big numbers as often. So hitting those actually made Red... Okay, it definitely killed the Newgate deck, but it definitely made Zoro more of the aggro deck that it used to be now.
Pump your brakes. I don't think Newgate's dead, but that's just a conversation for all together. You play way more Newgate than me, but I just don't think the leader's dead. But one thing I do want to say, touching on the card specifically, just also doubling on what you said just now, the one thing I think that's really not fair at all, is that on 8 Dawn as Newgate, you can swing out, let's say you have 1 vanilla. Let's say that it's not going great for you and you only have 1 vanilla on the board on your 8 Dawn turn. You turn your leader sideways for free. You turn a vanilla sideways. That vanilla can be the 6K, 5K, or 6K, 7K, or 8K vanilla. You turn that sideways. Your opponent's not defending these for free. It's not 5K swings. And then you're tapping 4 and playing a Marco. You're tapping 4 and playing a Marco on your next turn. You're tapping 9, playing a Whitebeard, and sitting on a Rad Beam with 2 Marcos on the board. Who's getting past that? Nobody is. Other Newgate players, sure. But that was just mechanically not where it's at for the game. And I just feel like it was just such a real scenario where there's so many people who experience that, right? Where your opponent has 2 Marcos on the board. They have a full hand because they just picked up all 6 of their life going through the game, and then you just see how many Newgates does he have. It's not impossible to crack, and it's not impossible to fight, but I think that what they did on the ban list that makes it a fair ban list is that they didn't hit the cards that make the decks like powerful necessarily, or makes the color powerful. I think they hit the cards that are mechanically too much. And saying cards like it's not just about Rad Beam being a 1-drop for 4K. I think it's a 1-drop 4K that's searchable by like 2 or 3 of your searchers in your red list. You have the Marcos that are blockers that can attack, first of all, but then also they create this weird game state where they can block a huge attack, right? So you can never go too big, but even diving into it, you can never put Dawn onto an attack and be like, okay, I can clear it here, because no matter how much power you put behind it, it's 1 card for your opponent. It always maths out to be 1 card for your opponent, and that's too much. That's too much consistency. And Ninebeard is just Ninebeard. It's a good card. It was a really good card. It definitely going to 1 is totally fine. I think that it's just good, but I think that they did a good job with hitting the cards that are just mechanically too much. They don't need to leave the game, but your opponent shouldn't be able to sit on multiple of them, and you shouldn't have to grind through looking at your opponent's hand in the late game and being like, is that 4 Rad Beams? Is that 16K counter power? What? On a 6K leader is just a little bit too much. So I think that they did a super good job on not killing red, because I think that red is still super powerful. And I think that it has lots and lots of legs still. Completely every leader. Luffy, Zoro, Whitebeard, I definitely think still has a lot of life in him. It's just going to be a different life. But I think that's really good. But asking Eric, you specifically, you were a red player. You played Zoro quite a bit. Would you come back to One Piece now that red has a like more fair kind of list going with it, or is that something that's like intriguing to you as somebody who stopped playing the game, or does that matter at all?
The real honest answer, which is probably bad, is Marco is the only expensive card I don't own. And now that it's at 1, like, it's probably super cheap for me to build Zoro, I bet, because I've got the Whitebeards and I've got the Rush Zoros. So there's a decent chance I'll put it together. You know, I've got friends who have all the bulk I can usually get a hold of, and will give it to me for free or cheap. Mm-hmm. So it's probably something I'm interested in. I think I'm missing some of the film cards, which I may be able to just find replacements for, so I don't have to spend $10 for some vanillas. I can just maybe play a worse one or something. I don't know. But, you know, I think One Piece is a fun game to chill and play. You know, it's the best. I really like the best of 1 in it. It's casual. I mentioned we won't go into deep, but like Pokemon's the best of 1 in most local tournaments. It's only best of 3 in regionals. So yeah, I really like that a lot. And tournaments go quick. You know, it's a very mind-intensive game, both One Piece and, you know, Pokemon as well, where you're thinking a lot and you're doing complex turns and have to really go into the tank to figure out the right play. So you get drained quick. And the best of ones make that a lot easier. So I can see myself popping in occasionally if I have time. I definitely think, you know, timing right now is it's summer, so I'm, you know, more busy on the weekends usually, so I don't have as much time to get out for more games, and I'm usually trying to play Digimon right now because I think the format's great. But I can definitely see having a deck ready for some casual play when I'm just hanging out with people if someone asks to play. Yeah,
for sure. How about for you, Matt? I know you messaged me the other day asking for Ninebeards because you were just thinking about throwing a red deck together. Is that so? Now that red isn't just like super like broken, I still think it's tier 1. I still think it's like arguable to be best deck in the format. But do you still think that red is a color that you would play now that it's been hit a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in like OPO1, I played a lot of red, and so like I still have, you know, Zoros, and I think if I did jump back in, I would definitely just put that deck together because I think it's really straightforward, and I think You didn't even play Marco's. You'd still play the Whitebeard, the one. But yeah, I don't think the deck really is that different. Just like the Zoro build that I was building. And I could even play like, the Luffy, starter deck Luffy.
Yeah.
I genuinely, like, when I look at playing One Piece, I think it's like, I don't think I found like a groove in the way that, like, when I play other card games, I find a deck that like synergizes with how I want to play in general. And maybe it's just One Piece in general that does that restricts my play style just because of the game and how it is. But I feel like it's been hard to find that footing for myself. And like, yeah, like I mean, you guys know I play a lot of purple.
Yeah.
One Piece purple it's
different.
Yeah, I don't know. It's different, and it's not like going like minus Dawn is not something I like to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that's just like negging myself in a way that I like haven't experienced in other card games. Like, because that's just like a different mechanic, and so yeah, I think I just like I've been thinking about the Magellan deck. Right? Is that purple guy? Is that his name?
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that deck looks annoying, and every time I play against it is so annoying. But I don't know if maybe I just need to just practice some more with some more purple. But yeah, just having a hard time like finding the deck that like really speaks to me, or the play style, honestly.
No, for sure. And I think that that's one thing with One Piece being so early in its lifespan. I think that the one thing, I've made a video about this, but the one thing about One Piece that I like so much that I think that it can appeal to so many people, right? But it needs time to grow a little bit, in my opinion. With Dragon Ball and me getting into it, we're plugging this twice. With Dragon Ball and me getting into it in like set like 19 or 18 or something like that, once a game has so much life in it, and you can go back and pull more cards out of the catalog, I think that the ceiling of skill play and just having more play styles available to you, because the more leaders that we get, we're just gonna get more and more just like play styles, more and more effects that synergize with people. So I think that's going to be a time thing, but I totally respect that right now, just in the game landscape with the way that it is, every leader has a play style, and if you can't find a play style within those like however many leaders it is, whether it's like 30 or 20 something, right, it's just maybe not a game that you're playing. But going forward too, so it's looking like it's going to be a conversation between me and you here, especially because you just topped with Whitebeard. That's something to talk about really quickly. You piloted it in the last regional that Whitebeard was going to be legal in, and you got your invite, right?
Yes.
Yeah, congratulations. What place did you get?
I think 29.
Awesome.
Yeah, 29.
Not a bad place, especially when only top 32 gets an invite to such a big tournament like Nat. So, no, it's a fantastic. I think that you just have an understanding for Whitebeard, right? You've been playing it for a while. So a lot of these questions, I think that you will have a good place of reference. So one thing that I think that I've been seeing online so much, and one thing that I do want to touch on when we're talking about red is the question, like, is red dead? Did these cards that are definitely the most mechanically broken cards in the colors pool, did those like kneecap the color in dead, or kneecap the color in general? And are we going to see just more colors come out and dominate? Is yellow going to be the new best deck in the format?
Yeah, the problem Yellow had against Whitebeard and like any red deck was the Marcos, right? One Marco, they could like answer it with like a Thunderbolt where they could trash like kill it, but once they have two blockers out, they had no way to out it. Without with like more resources just to kill it. So with Marco gone, they have a better shot because their worst matchup was Whitebeard and it's Zoro too, but Zoro didn't need the Whitebeard to win against them since they were all low end high aggressor attackers. And the thing, like what Matt brought earlier, like, yes, this new set brought new characters that were more archetype specific. And I know a lot of people are arguing that Newgate should have been, the Nitro Newgate should have been, like, it had to be a Whitebeard leader in order to use it. Because it was such a free card that you could just put in any red deck that gave red, like, a late game. But now with Newgate down to 1, pretty sure, like, Luffy and Zoro are opting that out and just thinking more to, like, a low-end, early, high-aggressive game style now.
One thing to touch on, too, with that comment about Ninebeard being so splashable, when you look at topping lists, especially the topping list from this most recent event, the decks that weren't Whitebeard specifically were not playing Ninebeard. Actually, all of them were playing a different package all the way through, just because Ninebeard was so expensive. It feels like when you're taking Ninebeard out of the deck, or you're taking Ninebeard out, you don't need that plus 2k, because going from a 7k leader and an 8k leader, it doesn't seem like very much, but that's a big difference. That's an additional Dawn even on your 7k swing leaders, which are the most aggressive in the deck or in the game, and that really keeps you out of attaining that. But if you're at a 7k leader with a 5k base leader like Ace or Zoro, when you go up to 7k, that's not the end of the road, right? Because your opponent can that's slightly attainable. I think that Ninebeard with Whitebeard specifically was at a different power level than Ninebeard with other decks. But that's just the one note I want to make about just looking at deck lists, because that's something I was looking at a lot because I was having a hard time building Red in general because I haven't played it in so long. And I agree. I thought that Ninebeard was like the top end, the generic thing that you play in Red. But we did see a good amount of success from deck profiles in the later part of the meta of OPO2 and the beginning of this meta, where if it wasn't Zoro and it wasn't, if it wasn't Whitebeard, they weren't playing the Ninebeard, which is just interesting. It's just like one of those things where people, you're going to play it or you're not, right? But I just don't know if it's, I just don't think it's going to handicap Red. Looking at the meta, I do think that Yellow Katakuri, for example, being the strongest yellow deck, is now going to have some legs going into the meta, but Zoro losing Ninebeard, let's say Zoro losing all of these tools, they barely use any of them, but Zoro losing Ninebeard, I don't think makes enough of a difference to make Katakuri win the matchup, because but Zoro, let's say taking that first place list that won that regional most recently, or the one before the most recent one, because you played in the most recent one, but the one before that where Zoro took first place and had the new Whitebeard pirate card that lets you play with your rested Dawn. That list didn't have any Ninebeard, and I think that list and that version of Zoro where it's just slamming down rush attackers, pushing super aggressively, and not worrying about the late part of the game because it'll be over already, is still going to have its same matchup into Katakuri, which is going to keep Katakuri out of the meta. I think that's one of the big reasons why you only saw one Katakuri make it into Top Cut, because so many people were on Zoro.
So
yeah, I definitely think Oh yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I just had a question. Like, what do you guys think like holds Yellow back? Because I got to play Yellow a little bit, and yeah, it does seem like it's missing something, but I don't know what it is. So after you guys have done that,
I don't think it's the consistency. I think I can really speak to this because I have played Black Yellow Big Mom, which was the weakest yellow leader, so I think that I got to experience Yellow's weakest moments, and I would say one of the things that keeps Yellow back the most is the absence of +1 healing. I think that having your healing be very limited and having so many of your like such good effects be linked to like trashing your own life and things like that, to have a card like Thunderbolt be very consistent in the yellow color, you would need a really consistent way to heal that life back. If you're at 3 life and you're putting yourself to 2 against like a Zoro deck and you're popping a Marco, one of the problems was that they're going to keep the Marco, but now you're at 2 life and it's hard to defend. You're playing a lot of cards without counters. So keeping up that consistent +1 in your life is difficult for every yellow leader to do except for Black Yellow Big Mom. So I think that's one of the things that keeps Yellow down in its like place in the meta, is that it's not developed enough. It's the first set that Yellow's come out, so we haven't gotten that second wave of really good yellow cards. Like, we don't have that 4-drop Kaido who just doesn't die at a certain life point, and we don't have cards like that. We don't have all the free from life triggers that are actually usable and stuff. So there's a whole portion of value that I think that we just didn't get in the first set because it's Yellow's first iteration into the meta. You can't give it all of the tools that Blue's accumulated over 3 sets or Red's accumulated over 3 sets, or whatever else. So in my opinion, that's a big thing that's keeping Yellow back.
Yeah, Yellow's trying to get into the late game, and since they play on a very tight curve where they're trying to get into their 6, their 8 into their 10, like their Big Mom to trash and get in life, the things that Red is not giving that opportunity to get into the late game. And then with Newgate, with a 6k leader, you always had to give one Dawn to each of your guys just to hit neutral. But then you're playing a tight curve, so you're not allowed just to do that. And if you don't play by the curve, you're just turned behind. Then you just have bodies just out there for no reason.
I agree. Does that line up a little bit with what your experience with playing Yellow was? I know that you were kind of learning playing in OPO3 and stuff at the same time, so looking at the kind of mechanics of playing, because you played Katakuri in your OPO3 tournament, right, Matt?
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, the best time I had with Yellow was when it pretty much was not the best. Like, I did not have a good time.
The best time was at the time you weren't playing.
Like there
when
was
you were
no
relaxing.
triggers happening.
Mhm.
There was no triggers. Like I wasn't getting any value. And like the cards I was trying to set up, like like Cracker, like into Marco, what does what? Nothing. Like it was terrible. I was like, this is not happening for me. And I didn't play against the best decks.
Yeah, for sure. It was just kind of
when it did well, like it was like 7-drop Big Mom, 10-drop Big Mom, 10-drop Big Mom, like back, like that was my turns, right? Just like 7, 10, 10. But like and so I was able to really like my opponent wasn't pressuring me at all, so I just got there. But like other than that, like it was really a very hard hill to climb up.
For sure.
Honestly.
One thing that I can note too, looking back at when I was building Yellow and I was really speculating, right? Because I really like to build decks from scratch. You guys know this about me. I'm always building some weird stuff and doing some weird combos. So when I was really looking at not knowing exactly what the leaders were doing, but I realized that Black Yellow Big Mom was the only card that could heal yourself. The things that I looked for that don't exist in Yellow that I was asking Tuso, Randy, Quan, everybody for was I was looking for cards that have free triggers that don't cost you to discard a card from hand, and I was looking for cards that +1 you life. I think that it boils down to adding those two things to the Yellow package is what's going to bring Yellow up just a little bit, and they are coming. I've looked at, like, I think it's like OPO4 stuff and the starter deck stuff. We get a few more cards that we can just slam. We get a few more cards that come out of life for free, and we get a few more cards that I think I found a card that +1s you life. I think it was like a Charlotte Linlin that was a 7-drop or something. Don't quote me on that though, but Tusa, did you have something else that you were noting though with the Whitebeard versus the red versus yellow in the meta currently topic?
Red versus yellow. Okay, so like, back to Newgate, right? Newgate was only good because you had to play it because you knew other red decks were playing. Because if you weren't playing it, you were having a hard time. Switching against Newgate mirror matches, it's all about I'm playing Newgate because they're playing Newgate. So if let them take away Newgate, it doesn't do anything to Zora. Zora could just go aggro and just attack with their small bodies, which is why Yellow has a hard time, right? Because Yellow only has so many cards in their hand, and they're going to discard for their body triggers, and they play so many non-counters, and they're just going to take those heads, and they just never get to the late game.
Yeah, no, it's very, very true. I think that the statement that I will make, in my opinion, for where I think that the listed and where red is right now is I think the list or the ban list made a little bit of space for more decks to breathe in the space of being fair and fighting red on an equal basis. And I think that I don't think we lose Whitebeard in the meta, but losing the number of spots that, let's say that Whitebeard would take up in a top cut, I think that opens up a little bit of room for those random Dofi players, for those, maybe not a Kaido player, but those random Dofi players, those Law players, those whatever decks weren't quite making it to top cut and were just bubbling out of top cut due to matchups, right? Now they're having a little bit easier of time when they're running into a deck in the tournament that just isn't playing fair, that is just abusing the mechanics of the game. So I think we see a little bit of space, but I don't think we see much space, honestly. I don't think we see very much lean off of, because we still have unblockable Luffy. That card's nutty. I think we still have Zoro. That card is super, super nutty. We still have crazy searchers. We have 4 searchers in the color. We have the Dadan, we have the one Buggy, we've got the Nami, we've got the Izo, and they can all fit in the same deck. We can turn all of those searchers into 7k attackers. I think red just has a lot right now. But specifically talking about Whitebeard, and we have talked about this a little bit, you have said that you think that Whitebeard is dead too. So where do you think that the deck goes now, just in general? If you want to play a Whitebeard list, where do you put your Whitebeard list right now at all, even if it's not at the highest level of competition?
I don't know. So many cards got hit. You play. There's no like. Okay, they limited the card to 1, which I don't get why. Because why are you playing like a Sagi 1-of in your deck? even though you have third, just because like even if you see them, it came down to I sacked the Newgate, I sacked the 1-of. And honestly, I guess if you do play Newgate, you just scrap them and just play like wherever you can. Like maybe instead of Marco, you play like a cheaper blocker, and maybe instead of a Newgate, you just play Ace as your top end or a Luffy. You basically go back to like the Strawberry version back in OP2. But even that, I just say you throw the deck away. You'll also like your cards already.
He said toss the deck. I think that there's merit. I think there's merit in Strawberry. Actually, having you mention that and not think that it's strong is super interesting to me. I just think that Strawbeard has life. I think that playing the Straw Hat crew, I think right now, right, the biggest thing that Red has going for it, now that we've lost the mechanical things, unblockable Luffy's pushing for game. I think that we have really crazy aggression going all the way up the line, just like the way that Rush Zoros were playing for a while, where it's like you take a rush attack on turn 2 from Sanji, you take a rush attack on turn 3 from Zoro, you take a rush attack on turn 4 from Luffy. And then at one of those points, one of those rush attackers will restand and get allotted on the next turn. I think we just see a return of that playstyle. So many decks are focused on blockers and blocker efficiency right now, right? Red going into red, it was all about the Marco. Dofi having a good matchup into Whitebeard, in my opinion, was about the fact that Dofi could bring out so many blockers that it didn't matter when your Marco killed a Dofi or killed a Law, right? Because you had a Dofi that came out for free, or you have a Pacifista line that comes out for free, or whatever else you have in the blue matchup that comes out for free. You have Ace as well. Ace is a banger of a card, just a 7-drop that can come down and actually do so much in the sense that now Ace can come down and just clear bodies. I think that you find value in just so many different places in Whitebeard, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just super incorrect and you throw the deck away.
Not gonna work, man. Especially OP4. You don't play red anymore. Red's not that good anymore in OP4. So just innovate something different for now.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. If you had to kind of pick some colors that get new life for the meta, what are the top colors that are like heroes of the ban list? What decks get to come out and play now?
Yellow gets to play better because Marco's gone.
yeah, that's true.
Every color but blue KOs bodies, and the things that have Marco was itself the card that can stop purple, black, yellow, and red from killing it. So blue was the only color that can get rid of it without actually KOing it, without it come back.
Mm-hmm.
So blue is kind of like a loser in a sense because Marco's not there anymore. So who cares about it?
Yeah, very, very true. Are there any colors that you're looking to play, or are you going to stick with red?
Red. I mean, purple and green has no love in this set.
Yeah, then
so you just got to play yellow, black, and red. That's it.
One thing to talk about the red leaders is which one do you think comes out as the biggest winner? Which one do you think is going to be the strongest? Is it still Zoro?
I think so. It's going to be Zoro. It's that leader that's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
It's going to keep it forever.
For my pick personally, and Matt and Eric, feel free to throw some out here as well, even if it's just something that you think. But I think that, honestly, I think Zoro's great. I like Zoro so much. He's never been my number one. His playstyle just isn't for me. I think the number one red decks that we're going to see come out is Law, because I watched you play Law yesterday in Quan's tournament. Dude, you made that deck look insane. The amount of aggression, you were just bouncing Zoros back to back, and the thing was that you didn't need to swing super big numbers because you swung so much. Your defense was super impeccable and it was super just, you couldn't pierce it, right? You had so many floaters that floated into other cards. So having the red green package come back, I really think that Law has some legs. Seeing the film package in there as well, where you can just build a board early in the game and then go into your really powerful 5s quick is really good as well. But the winner of the tournament being Ace, that Ace deck was crazy. I was watching it all stream. We watched it so many times. And Ace has legs right now. Having Fire Fist coming down and wrecking, because now that people don't have Marcos, Ace is smacking blockers and then just swinging into face and sitting on a bunch of events and not taking damage. On top of that, they don't need a whole bunch of cards in hand, right? Because they're slamming seven drop Ace character cards to pair with that. And then every card, even if they have a handful of events and they need to tap out to play an Ace to get over some characters, every event in their hand, they're not dying, every event in their hand is a 1k. So I think that Ace actually gets a lot of legs, and the big thing is that Ace now has room in the deck to play like those one of techs. You can play, what is that, Flame Emperor? Is that the big event card for red?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Only for Ace though.
Only for Ace later. That's fine. That's fine. Ace's best red deck anyway. But having room to slam Flame Emperor in your deck, having room to play like the Crossfire, I think, is the one that you can minus 4k on a card on the board. You have more room now. You have a few more cards. You don't need to be super aggressive. You never really need to slam a 9-beard. You don't have access to Radical Beam. Your 4k defense did get hit, and your blocker defense did get hit, but you have just room to play you can play some more aggressive cards. You can play some more events that protect you. You can play more events that can kill cards, and I think that that's where it really, really wins. You're killing so many more cards on the board, and you're really just not letting your opponent breathe. As far as balance on the board, as on top of the fact that your whole hand is events, so no attacks are really getting through unless your opponent's going wide, but you can deal with that by killing it. So before I rant on too long, that Ace deck was just nutty. It just did so much back to back, and I mean, you played against it in the finals. What were your thoughts on the deck since you were piloting Law and playing into Ace?
I already knew that Harvard's gonna lose that one. And Law just loses to Ace because they can probably buy it. Because the whole point of Law is you build all these small guys on board and you do your little thing, you switch them around. But Ace just pops all your body.
Yeah, one thing to
only in that matchup.
No, for sure. One thing to touch on too is that when you were playing out the matchup, we were talking about it before you started playing, and it is an uphill fight for you. It's not favorable for you because they have access to the Fire Fist and things. One thing that you did to mitigate that was really nicely, you just played all floaters. Every card you played floated into another card in hand. So when he was popping cards on your board, he was losing cards in hand one card at a time. The Fire Fists were two for 2s. So he was losing card advantage slowly, but you're keeping card advantage by going searcher. But he just got there in the end. It was just a little bit too much for you. So I think that there's it's just super interesting, and like you said, you knew that you were kind of going into that as the not favorable player there. But I think that you did a really good job. I just think it's a crazy space for the meta. So exiting that one. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I was just add one last thing. I would say I think going with Tusa, just want to go back to Zoro. I think Zoro is an insanely busted card. I don't know why they printed a card that can give 6k Dawn for 6k boost for 1 Dawn effectively. Spread across your board. I think the big thing with the bans is it dropped the ceiling of Zoro by a lot. The deck doesn't necessarily have as much of a high power, but I think it's going to be the most consistent red deck across the board we're going to see because it just doesn't need any synergy to pop off. It just does what it does no matter what you do. You don't need to be based around your opponent's board. You're just playing small stuff and you're swinging in.
Yeah.
And it's always going to kind of level set itself in the format. Just due to the nature of red stuff swinging in is going to be good enough to do the job against a lot of decks, and it's going to baseline everything going forward by itself.
Yep, I totally agree. I absolutely agree there. Switching.
Especially, I was just gonna say, especially it's one of those things where it always can come back. Like a good rush deck can always come back and do things, even if it goes out of the meta.
I think that Bandai doesn't mind having a super aggressive deck in their meta. I think that they hit the cards that gave red too many reaches into the range of mid-range and control. And I think they just dialed that back. But I think that they want red to still be the aggro pusher for what an aggro deck can do. And every other aggro deck that's in other colors or maybe multicolor leaders are just trying to do something similar. So that's just kind of how I feel about it for sure. But what I was going to say is rotating over gears. We're going to talk a little bit about Battle Spirits, especially with Battle Spirits being Bandai's newest card game. And touching on what we were talking about before, Matt, this isn't just me and you for the most part. Tusa and Eric, I know Tusa, you've played a little bit, so you have to share your thoughts. But Eric's just going to be chilling.
Those gems. I know there's gems. That's why experience. There's gems and Gundams.
Yep, there's gems and Gundams. No, for sure. And that's kind of one thing that we really, I do want to talk about is Bandai. So with Bandai growing, right, we're seeing patterns where Bandai is implementing things that they didn't do in their past card games and making things better. For example, One Piece didn't have an EX set, but Battle Spirits did. And that did save the end of the Battle Spirit Saga format. It was pretty fun playing with the new crazy draw engine because they just added a bunch of cards that are just 1-for-1s, right? So now you can put 8 cards in your deck that cycle your deck 8 cards faster, and it does feel like we got a really big step up in the speed of the game. So knowing that Bandai is able to just kind of see some of their mistakes in the past and kind of developing the game, Battle Spirits being their baby, what do you think that Battle Spirits needs to do, and Eric, you as well, since you don't play the game, what does Battle Spirits kind of need to do to bring people in and kind of grow, in your guys' opinions? There's so many ways that you can go about this, and I have my own opinion about it, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll start. I think having more. I think Bandai has a lot of different, properties that get people excited. Like, we know there's a lot of collabs coming in, and I think that those collaborations that they've done over in Japan, like, they need to just do those more and really forefront them and push them to get people into it. Because what's Battle Spirits? You don't know. You don't know what Battle Spirits is, and if you do, you're already playing.
Yep.
Right. Like, it needs to get that recognition from other people by using those collaborations, the Digimon collaboration, the Gundam collaboration, like really highlighting those to bring new players in so that the game can start playing.
Yeah.
Like, I know that they did this tournaments and having money at these tournaments, that really got people engaged in going to tournaments, but also it's a very small population of people. It's highly competitive players.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Highly competitive players and players that already knew about Battle Spirits because they kept tabs on it in Japan. right?
Nope.
And that is just as I've seen like it's just a small player base. Out of all these 4 card games, like it has the smallest player base.
Yep.
Most of these people in the West, and so especially coming over in the Midwest here where we are, like people just don't know about it and they're not playing it.
Yep.
This is why I think that's why those collaborations would bring more people in to be playing it.
Absolutely, I agree on you there. Eric, how about for you? From the outside looking in, what would bring you in?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's one of it. I mean, I definitely want to say you can point to there's been successful card games that are holding on, like Fab, that don't have existing IP around them that get it, but I feel like kind of what Battlefield is doing to make those existing card games thrive, they almost always have to be extremely competitive focused. You know, like Fab is an extremely competitive game. It's a very complex game, extremely high skill ceiling. They're doing a lot of competitive events where they have Magic style circuits with Star City games with money on the line, and that's really what grew the event. And that's what Battle Spirits kind of did, But when you do that, it draws a certain type of clientele, and it makes it hard to kind of get the casuals to come in because even at the local level when they're coming, the people that are really going to be coming to those locals are the sweaty players that want to grind for their big events.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they're getting pub stomped more often. Yeah, exactly. With that there, So it's kind of hard. And then those collaborations is really what drives it. A lot of people got into One Piece just because they like One Piece. I got into Digimon. I like card games, but I got into Digimon because I like Digimon. That's why I started playing it and why I got back into physical card games because I really like Digimon. I do a lot of the IP. And Battle Spirits had some cool stuff. Like I thought about opening some packs for the Gundam IP when I saw it dropped, but once I found out that the Gundam IP is just existing cards, alt arts, I'm like, well, I feel like I'm just playing a card game, and I wouldn't even want to play the alt arts in my actual deck then, so I'm not going to get to look at the Gundams. I'd rather collect those. So there kind of has to be that drive, and they kind of I feel like are looking for a more casual game to get people into, and I think, honestly, as much as it sucks to say, is the fact that it's an existing game in Japan pushed a lot of people away because they already have seen how successful it is in Japan.
Yep.
So there's definitely people that followed it, and they're like, I love it, I play it. But a lot of people see it, and I see it, and I'm like, well, it's in Japan, but it's still not one of the top games in Japan. Like, it's a big game, but it's not, like, top 2.
Yep.
So why would I want to get into a game that I don't think is pick up? Like, I don't even think it's necessarily bigger than Digimon in Japan right now, and Digimon's maybe 3rd. Behind, probably Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say in Japan. And so if it's not even driving the Japan population, it's been existing for so long, and they're bringing it over here, it doesn't make me seem like it's going to last that long, and I don't want to necessarily invest into it that much. I mean, a lot of my friends really like it, and I guess the one other thing is it seems kind of slow from what I've heard, and maybe I'm wrong, because again, I've played 0 games, I haven't even played the full rules. Like I said, I know there's gems and Gundams, I know there's colors based, and I've talked about some rules, and I know like the leveling mechanics, kind of how they work and stuff like that, but a lot of missing parts. But it seems like a game that's more based on going back and forth, a lot of interaction, and if I'm going to play a lot of interaction, I'm going to play a game that I want to get really sweaty in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe One Piece where you're getting really sweaty, or go deep into a game like Magic the Gathering where interaction's very heavy, or Fab. There's just games for that already, and Battle Spirits doesn't seem to drive to me because I don't feel like Bandai does the best at interaction-heavy games. I feel like One Piece they've done pretty well, surprisingly, but if you look at their pass card games and, what they already do, the best parts of their existing games usually are less around the interaction and more around the building synergies and board state with your own things. And, stopping your opponents, but not necessarily back and forth nonstop throughout a turn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would have
interesting.
to push back on that point.
Oh, really? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
No,
I
you're
feel
good.
like Battle Spirits is pretty interactive.
Mhm.
Like they
Oh,
have,
no. I'm saying that. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it is, and I'm not. I feel like just, it's a very interactive game, but I don't feel like it's competitive enough to make me want to play that interactive of a game compared to some of the other competitive games that I've tried out so far, or there's just other stuff
you're
that
just
fills
talking
the
about
itch.
popularity.
Yeah, exactly. There's other stuff that fills the itch that I'm already in, so there's nothing to draw me to it specifically. But I
For
definitely,
sure.
I want to say it's a very interactive heavy game from what I've seen. That's why kind of my point to that degree even.
Right, where it's not as attractive because it is so interactive. No, I can get that. I can get that for sure. I think one thing about Battle Spirits, that the thing that they need to do to grab more people in, but the thing that they have kind of going for them right now is I think they just definitely need to bring, on the collaboration side, right? They definitely, I think, I agree with Matt, where having specific collaboration sets come in is going to be kind of their biggest thing, right? I think that it's one of the things where when you have these IPs, look at Digimon, look at One Piece, right? It's just really attractive to their fan base, and I think that's one of the big things with new age card games that people are just really really liking for what they're playing, right? It's just something that you like in general, and then you have the card game too. I think one of the things too with just like the gameplay of the game, I think it is super super fun, but I can say that it's super 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 skill based, right? Everybody goes through these waves that at least that I've noticed. I've gotten a lot of people into the game and I've played the game quite a bit, and in my experience I've seen it kind of goes where, yeah, let's say it's level 1 where it's understanding the game and getting to play the game from understanding its point of view. Super fun, super interactive, super crazy, right? And then you take it just one step higher going to level 2, and that's where you really start to know the card pool, the interaction lines, and then kind of what's going on. And then once you hit level 3, I think that that's where you see these players that are going to open events and these big online events and topping online events and things like that. And when you're going through the game, it's more than just knowing what your opponent's doing. It's just like any other card game, right? You're just getting better at it. And I think the big thing with Battle Spirits is that it's so skill based that if you are at the point of your learning curve that you're playing as a level 1 player and the only person in your area or the only person that can teach you is a level 3 player, you're not going to take a game. It doesn't matter what they play. You're not going to take a game off them. It doesn't matter if they have a structure deck in their hands, right? Because they just have such an understanding of the game and such an understanding of how things go. And I think that that's actually something that's daunting for people. I think that when people pick up, let's say like Digimon, for example, right? You can pick up a Digimon starter deck and you can play against somebody that's super experienced with a Digimon starter deck, and you can take your very first game playing Digimon only knowing the very basics of the game, right? And just having them talk you through kind of like how you do. All it is Digivolving and attacking when in a simplified state. Compared to Battle Spirits, right? It goes so much deeper than that, and it's so much more than that. And I think that's one of the things, doubling back to even the Dragon Ball Super card game, where when they have these card games that are more, in my opinion, calling a card game competitive, it doesn't focus on the player base of the card game. It focuses on the mechanics and like what goes into the card game. We've talked about this so much, but it's things like the amount of RNG in the game. It's things like the amount of game knowledge that you need to get into the game. And I think that's something that we can all attest to is like, if we're bringing a friend into Digimon, right, they might not be able to like take a locals, right? But if you put a deck in their hands and you can give them enough of the information, they can pilot the deck and they can do good. They can pilot the deck and do what they need to do. There's such different varying levels of this, right? You can take that aspect with One Piece, but with One Piece so much more. You're going to see people, you can give somebody a Zoro deck, the top deck in the meta, tell them what they need to do, and they can still lose, and they can still fail with the deck because One Piece introduces more layers of skill. And I think that Battle Spirits takes it to the far end of the spectrum where it's so skill based, and it's so hard to play with people at different levels. Even if you're at level 1 playing against somebody that's like level 2, right, it's just going to feel like such a difficult game. So I think that that's something that is deterring people, and I think that that's something that just is one of the roadblocks that the game's gonna have to get over kind of down its lifespan eventually, where things are gonna balance out, right? People are gonna learn, cards are gonna power creep and things are gonna come leveled out so much. But right now in the Battle Spirits meta, it's a wild west. You have to stay up to date with all the newest techs if you're gonna go to something like an event or like an open or an online event, right, where you need to know how everything operates. So it's just something to think about. I think that one of the things with Battle Spirits is that it is kind of not daunting to approach, but it is kind of just scary looking at, right? You're like, damn, I played my friend and I played this deck. It was supposed to be really strong and I lost 13 games in a row. And that will happen, because it's just so expressive. But I think that's just something that a lot of new games kind of are going to go through. But another big question is, do you guys think that Battle Spirits is going to be around next year or in 2 years? This is something kind of more equated to the general state of card games now in 2020 plus, I would say, where we're just kind of in a new age of card games, and we've seen card games fail in less than a year. Do you think Battle Spirits is one of those games?
That's a really good question. I think I want to see what the next set comes out, because I feel like if the next set comes out and there's not like an influx of new players coming in with it, then, and like, yeah, if things basically stay the same, then I don't see it like lasting that long.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I think something that, yeah, all of this has made me think of, like, yeah, like a casual scene is really important for a card game, especially at a local level. And if the game is too difficult
Mm-hmm.
to play, like if it requires too much to like hop in, like you're talking about like One Piece. I don't think like yeah, and even just having like the souls being a thing, like you need all these cores. Like even if you use the cards, you still need all of these cards. Like I don't even have enough soul core cards for me, right?
Right.
So like how could a new player just like be have the access of having all those cores? Yeah, that is a really good point of like the barrier it is coming into the game. And I'm just fortunate to have people to help and teach me those things and really get me settled in. But like even the people that you and I started playing with, like Mario, Dom, Carl, Britton, they don't even play anymore.
No, for
right?
sure.
And so yeah, I think it's really dependent on what they do seeing the turnout and like what they can like decide to like help that turnout. And if it comes down to like even making an app or something so that people can play it online to like learn better and more efficiently, I think. Is there one? I'm not sure.
I don't think there is. No, I don't think there is. I haven't. Oh, actually, yeah. People do play on Sim. People do play on Sim. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's Discord looking for groups for it.
Yeah, but even then, like I think Tabletop Simulator is. Like, if you're playing on Tabletop Simulator, you're already playing the game. Like,
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like if you're taking the time to like set that tabletop up, like you're already interested in a level that you're probably
gonna play.
Like, that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like
Right.
Master Duel, super easy to jump into. Like even like Dueling Book or these things that are like half baked, they're still something. Like even the Digimon like tutorial setup app. Like I know a lot of people that played that who never played the game, but they tried it out to see if it's something they would like. Like a lot of people who played Yu-Gi-Oh and people like that. So like those things are really important. Or like even keeping your database on your website for cards updated. Like they didn't even have their structure decks.
Yeah, all updated on there.
Bandai website, right? And I'm like looking for a card, and I'm like, this is not even on their website, right? So like a lot of things like that. Like if you're gonna dump a bunch of money into tournaments and things like that, like I guess like maybe they're just trying to attract that specific player group. And maybe that's their goal too, because like Bandai, they're not stupid, right? They have a lot of other card games going, and if that money isn't necessary for this card game to survive to them, like what they value and what they're getting from this card game, then maybe it will survive longer. It just really depends if that competitive scene even lasts that long, because like they have to keep the game fun and interesting at the same time to keep those players coming, not just having like a bunch of money sitting there.
Yep, for sure. How about you two? So what do you think about do you think the game will be here next year? Because you played a little bit of it, you got into it, you saw the height of what it's like playing with friends and stuff and how much fun it can be.
Yeah, I just played the most simple deck to play. What aggro was what? Yes. Swing the small guys. Oh wait, do people collect like Battle Spirit cards, or is it just like you just play?
No, people do collect. I've sold a handful of cards on Facebook and stuff like that. So there's definitely a market for it. There's definitely the hardcores, right? I've seen people buying the prize cards and stuff like that too. So the Facebook group is decently active.
Yeah, because I think what really defines like a card game is can you collect it, right? And if not that, and it's like, is it worth competing? Is it accessible? Is there a local scene where I could go and get introduced and play the game?
Yeah,
we have like a decent local scene. And the thing is, like, I think most of the events are just in person, right? Because I know that the online events aren't really firing us that well, right?
Yeah, I think how the
bad that prize support.
Yeah,
and, like they don't have the cash prize support is only for in-person events.
Yep. They definitely do need to introduce that that aspect that Digimon and One Piece has, where they have exclusive cards for webcam events, right? So that people will at least want to enter, whether they're alt cards that are valuable or just exclusive cards that you need to play. Probably not exclusive cards. That's a little bit toxic. But
yeah, I really hate the idea of exclusive cards for tournament entries. I mean, like, I'm gonna, as you've been doing your Dragon Ball callback, Pokemon's erroneous for this because they have a stadium that only was given out at the World Championship called Poke Beach that lets you draw until you have 7 cards in your hand and ends the turn. As a stadium, and and there's a lot of crazy decks that like required it, and it's like a multi-$100 card because it's only available. You got one for being an entrant at Worlds, and that was it. And And so, like, you know, and it's like, why would you do this? They've never reprinted it since then, but it's legal in standard.
Yeah. Why would you let it be played?
Yeah, it's legal and expanded. I don't even know if it's still legal in standard, but I know it's legal and expanded still. You know, like, it's a legal card that people could play, and like some people show up tournaments, like, but like, why would you have this $800 single that you need 4 of for the deck that legal as a card? You know. So.
Yeah. I think but I definitely agree. Like, I don't think it should be like exclusive, but I have something. Like, I mean, like they like when they have like those cards, like dual legal, all those cards. Like, yeah, you want to go play in tournaments, but again, where are the people in the local tournaments?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
they're not there.
Yep.
And you don't, and you don't provide those cards in the online tournaments either. You just provide the same, and then the prize cards are the same exact cards that are just stamped with some foil on them. You know, it's just not exciting, right? Like,
right. I agree.
The tournament came out like a couple weekends ago, and I was like, I'm not gonna play. Like, I topped one, and it's like, well, what's gonna be new this time? Like, it's the same format.
Yep.
It's the same exact cards. There's nothing for me. Like, I have to win the event for it to even get something new, and like that's just not enticing as a player. Well, again, I enjoy playing the game.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. No, it is a super fun game to play, and I adore the game. So that's one thing to say too. I think that touching on new age card games, right? I think that's one thing that I really want to hit with this game or with this question, and we're just in different days than we were. I know that Force of Will is a super new game, but I know that that's a game that kind of died out, right? And I think that we're in a new position where we're seeing Bandai, for example, as a card game creator, kind of come out, and they've been dropping games super consistently. I talked about this before on the If One Piece is For You, but kind of on the timeline where they have Dragon Ball, then they had Digimon, then they had One Piece, and now we have Battle Spirits. Looking at how many of their games have popped and been really, really popular. We see Digimon being really, really popular, One Piece being really popular. In my opinion, I think that Digimon really did save Dragon Ball because it gave Bandai enough extra revenue to keep the game alive and continue feeding us, because we've gotten so many good features since the release of Digimon. We got like new mechanics for the game, we got a new client for the game, and all these things that have been beneficial and in my opinion come directly from the success of Digimon, because Digimon's crazy successful for a card game company, right? They're playing these online events that nobody else has really ever done, where they're having 1,000 people sign up for $30 an entry, right? And splitting it and just having TOs host these, right? And structures like these that are just all over the place. We talked about earlier about how they're releasing with Digimon a set, an EX set, a set, and then another set, right? They have a really consistent release schedule. So they have all these things that I think are supporting them and pushing them. They have another successful card game with One Piece. One Piece is another one of the biggest card games that you can't get product because it's sold out everywhere. Everybody's playing it. We have 32-man locals at every card shop all the time. We have 24-man locals at card shops all the time. And all these things and all these people kind of coming. So looking at Battle Spirits, I think that it's probably just going to piggyback off of how popular One Piece is, right? They're going to be able to keep the game alive. I don't think they're going to let the game die in 1 year. I think that since Battle Spirits is Bandai's baby IP and they own everything and they control everything that has to do with Battle Spirits, so they can do whatever they want. I think that it's super important that if it's their kind of love child for TCG players, and they gave us this cash prize tournament to lure real players into the game, right? They really want those competitive players. But I think that one thing that they're experiencing that they have dealt with before in the past is having a super competitive game that is really high level, but not having it be attractive to people that want something more casual. So the way I say that they've dealt with it before is that with Dragon Ball, going from Dragon Ball to Digimon, they're just on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Digimon's such an open, inviting game. It's so easy for people to pick up and then stick with it. I think that that's what they're seeing now. So they have One Piece where it's so easy for people to pick up and stick with it, and Battle Spirits is a way bit more difficult for people to pick up and stick with it, and for the reasons that we've already talked about, right, with the competitive nature of it. But I think that Bandai's going to do their best and do what they can do to keep it alive, because they want it to pop. They definitely want Battle Spirits to be a big card game for them, because they can just, obviously, because they can make so much money off it, they own all of it. But if they can do things like fill up webcam events, if they can have an 1,000-person webcam event for Battle Spirits, that is so huge for Bandai themselves and then the future of card games. So I think that they'll give it a really good go, and I hope that it works. I think one of the big things that needs to happen for the game to work is for the player base for the people that are playing the game to continue playing the game and being like kind of points of reference for all of the local people, because there are people in every, right? It's all about the different groups of players, right? There's a player that kind of represents it in every group of player, and that's kind of how games grow. You have you just have people that can introduce more people to the card game or play with people or whatever, right? And then you just have these groups that and communities that grow. And I think that that's what they need to do. I think that when a new player looks at Battle Spirits, they have to see people there already. That's the number one thing that they need. And I think that over time, if Bandai can find ways to get the core group of players to stay, I think that if the core group of players continues to grow, it's more attractive and more attractive and more attractive to people, and we can get it someplace eventually. But it's definitely a starting out card game, and I think that it's probably the smallest starting card game that we've seen in a long time, because looking at new card games, we've had like it's been like Flesh and Blood, which was huge, but it's all also slimmed down quite a bit. But a lot of them have been Bandai card games, right? We've had My Hero Academia as well, but that one's slimmed down quite a bit, and all these different centralized IPs. But Bandai just doesn't seem to be taking an L on their card games right now. So I think that they're gonna at least use that momentum to keep it going. And whether Battle Spirits kind of catches on or not, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that it'll be here next year. So if there is a community, I think that I think they can get people. But yeah, no, it's a lot of what we talked about with like introducing collabs and things like that, just to get people to come on in. So the next thing I want to talk about, though, is making Battle Spirits look a little bit better and talking about how amazing the meta's been. So just giving a quick rundown of how the meta's been. Matt, this is also for you because you've played super competitively as well, so you can speak to kind of how things go. But a quick recap for anybody that doesn't know the Battle Spirits Saga meta in general, it's been like this. The pre-release for the game, when you could only play with starter decks, everybody said that yellow was the best deck, and yellow was the most performing deck. For any pre-release events or anything like that, it was yellow topping because they had 2-cost Rush, which was just the deck to beat. Moving on to the first part of the release where we got the set release and people were playing with proxies and on the sim, the biggest deck going through there, so he's moved from a yellow deck and it was swapped right on over to red. Red Seaworm was the deck to beat, not only the deck to beat, it was the deck to pilot. It was super powerful, it had crazy mechanics, it had broken mechanics, and a lot of different ways for you to utilize going through the game. Moving on from there, we had the pre-release event when we had access to those cards by image, and then we got the full release in Vegas. The Vegas event was something that it was replicated all around the world. There was like the London event, there was multiple events in Europe, there was an event in Australia, just events all around the world where it was the grand open, the release of the full game, and we saw White be the deck. White was, so when we were talking about the colors before the game release, everybody was saying that white was the weakest color. Nobody was building white decks. Everybody said it was just too much, too counterable, too whatever else, right? And had so much to say. But now that we were at the full release of the game, we have white taking first place in America. I think white or purple took first place in Europe, and then someplace not in Asia, but it must have been like Oceania or something like that. It was a white deck that took first place as well, and it was Elephant Control, this big bomb deck kind of going into the meta. Pterosaurs was introduced in that meta, and now we kind of had a duality where we had one really aggro deck be first, and it wasn't the yellow aggro deck that we had at the start of the starter deck format, and then we had the really control-y white control deck that was just nutty. Moving on to there, we had more events kind of going on. So it was more events after that. After the first grand open, it was the release event. We had store championships, and we had I think it was more grand opens. I think there were official grand opens. There was a release of the game, and then I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the actual name of these tournament series. But now that we're going into more opens and things like that, the deck to beat, the deck that kind of countered. So we had Pterosaurs being the aggro deck that was kind of represented in the meta, and we had white being the control deck that everybody thought was where it was at. White got smashed. People discovered that purple now has these crazy counters to white, has these great board wipes and all these things that can also stay on top of red Pterosaur, and it kind of became this dichotomy of red versus purple. How do you take that win? We even saw that when we were in Ohio, right, where I played against like 6 or 7 purple decks. Matt was piloting purple. We still saw red decks and things like that, but people were on purple as just a development of the game. And all of this is just to kind of say and go over the fact that the game has just developed so much, and it's a color of the day. If you're not up to date with the newest text, the newest tactics, the newest counters to the counters to the counters, you're not staying at the top level of the game. And the thing that's really nice about that is that nobody knows. It doesn't matter how good of a player that you are in the beginning of BSS 01, you weren't calling, let's say, purple to be really the number one deck that comes down and counters Pterosaur in the way that it does. You weren't countering, definitely weren't calling white to be a deck that took the very first event. And the thing that's really nice about that is with the Battle Spirits meta is that it's so player skill based that it's a new deck every day. It's really people coming out with new strategies and then people innovating to beat those strategies, and that cycle over and over and over. And you're seeing people push themselves and push decks to just crazy limits. I know that I took a white purple axe spider deck that was not an archetype before the event, but somehow there was like 6 or 7 other people that were on that exact same list, or not exact same list, but that exact same archetype for an event like that, right? And it's really just just kind of talking about how wild the meta is. And for you, Matt, the question really just comes down to be like, what's your opinion on the development of the meta, and how is it being a Battle Spirits player in a game that's so turbulent, and what is it like being a meta that's so much different? Because when we're looking at One Piece and Digimon, right, you pick out those 3 decks at the beginning of the meta and everybody knows that they're going to perform for the whole meta, right? And we just haven't seen that at all in Battle Spirits, except for Pterosaur. Pterosaur has been super consistent since the release of the game, but it was no place to be found before in the speculations.
Yeah, I think it really just speaks to the competitive nature of the game. Like people who just sit down and look at the cards and think about every single interaction, they come up with like crazy innovations, like the white purple list, right? Of using the best parts of both colors. But I think this is just a good example too of like what I was trying to say that's lacking in One Piece. Like there's only one set out in a structure deck, and there's so much diversity in a list. Like just in a purple list, there's so much diversity, or a red list. Like there's already so much diversity in these decks and what you're gonna face up against. It does remind me a lot of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! These things where like you are rewarded for sitting down, figuring out something, interactions that like that figuring out those counters, figuring out the counters to the counters, right? Like you said, like it was white was like the best deck. My first big tournament, I thought, dang, I'm gonna have to face against a lot of white. I can't remove their cores. It's gonna be so annoying. I didn't see a single white matchup. It was all red, it was all purple, and it was yellow. And I was like, well, shoot, like, okay. So then the next thing I didn't plan to see any white.
Yep.
Or if I did, I'd be fine already because I knew what I needed to do for that matchup.
Yep,
and so I needed to prepare for these other decks. And then the tournament that I got third, I lost to a white purple deck, right? So I got a taste of that deck list before going into Ohio. Yeah, like you said, if you're not kind of seeing it or knowing about it, I wouldn't have known about those things if I had not played against them.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, I was like, what the heck is this list? Like, how do I even out this card? Like, what's the best way to out it? Can I even, is it worth outing? Yeah, thinking about those things, especially like a game that is, yeah, again, I have a hard time comparing it to any other card game I've played than Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I think it's like it's also different though because it does have that's at the start curve. Like it's really hard to kind of just like really aggro your opponent out once you're kind of aware of what to do against an aggro deck. So it lets you kind of get to a place where you can play your deck exactly how you want to play it. It's just like, is your opponent going to have the cards to stop you?
Yeah.
And so I think the meta has been really fun, and I enjoy playing in metas like that where I get to figure out things and cards that I want to put in that make my list special for myself. And so I really like that aspect of it. And yeah, to your point earlier, like when the meta shifted when those tournament cards got released, like Yellow, Blessed became, and Fable Beast became so much more of a meta contender just because of those cards. Axe Spider came out. Yep.
I totally forgot to mention. Yeah, no, very true. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, when when Bearded Eagle dropped, best deck in the meta. There was a 2-week, 3-week period. Definitely best deck in the meta. Difficult to deal with. Nobody was on Volcanic Break to get that Bearded Eagle out of there, and you were just so lost on what do you do when your opponent. You guys aren't going to know what I'm talking about, Tucson Eric. But when your opponent opens Hippo.
Eagle.
Oh yeah, Dual Eagle. I always get those mixed up. But yeah, no, Dual Eagle. But yeah, no, it's just when you don't know what to do when you're playing against Yellow and your opponent opens a Hippocampo and you're going first. Am I swinging or am I not swinging? Do I leave the defender up so my opponent can't Hippocampo me? But if they don't have it, I lose value. And just so many things like that, right? Where it takes some time. So that is definitely a point that I forgot to bring up, is that Yellow has had its moments for sure.
Yeah, and I would say like Yeah, it's very rewarding when you figure out your matchups and you are up to date on the things that you're going to be facing. It's extremely rewarding to
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, and it's not like, oh man, I just didn't see the card. It's like genuinely a game where if you know the things that your deck can do and their deck can't, like you can figure out the things that you need to do to get to the win. And I feel like there's so much more bluffing in a game like like seriously, like you set a star blessed draw and you only got 2 life left and your opponent doesn't know, thinks it's an ice shield, doesn't swing or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's so much more things where like or they don't have any flash or they're holding all these cores, they don't have anything,
Yep.
right? There's like different ways that like make the interaction like interactive. Like Digimon, either you have a blocker or I'm not doing anything on your opponent's turn, right?
Blockers and
Unless
security
I'm playing
bombs.
Bograbon or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, if you have a security card, but then your opponent can just turn off your security half the time, right?
Man,
With jamming or
ace
an
cards are out
option,
now.
Oh yeah, we
right?
have
Like
yeah.
One Piece, it's like was it more interaction than Digimon, but still was not the level of interaction that I was used to, right?
Yep.
Like be it like Battle Spirits, I think plays that line of like, yeah, you have interaction. You don't have interaction forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very specific window when you can interact,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a very important window,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it still lets you play the game where you can do everything you want to do in your main phase, and then right when you go to that attack step, like that is when like all your chips have to be lined up, all the things you have to be ready for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what makes the interaction so rewarding, is because you get to do the stuff you want to do still, and then there's that level of interaction that where you get to kind of flex your skill of, or flex your bluffing and flex all these different things that you can play and mind game your opponent. So
Yeah. No, for sure.
yeah, I feel like like now, like waiting for the next set, which is coming out this next weekend, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like now I like definitely gonna be like going back in and like they're introducing a whole new color.
Yep.
And blue hasn't even been looked at yet. So like, that's why I think like this game is like it's gonna be here for a bit, only because like they still have so much planned
Yep.
right from the start. Like they have 6 colors, they only have 4 out right now.
Yep.
It's just once they get established, like once Digimon got established, like once One Piece is getting established, like I'm sure, like once those things like got more established, more people started coming in because there was just a little more options. So hopefully that'll get people coming in.
Definitely. It's fair. Eric, how about for you, looking at a game that has such a diverse meta, is it somewhat attractive at all, or does it not matter at all? Because looking at Digimon, right, comparatively, you just know what's going to be good before you come into it, right?
So for me personally, not as much of an issue. I will say, kind of to give the contrary point, I definitely know there's people who play card games and they aren't a big fan when the meta shifts that constantly.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a new age thing, honestly. It's not something that a lot of us who played when we were younger ran into, because net decking was a thing, and we definitely used something we all looked at, and there was a meta for sure, but it was a much less prevalent factor of the overall, lifeblood of the game. Later years, Yu-Gi-Oh for sure became more prevalent, but overall games developed from a point where that wasn't the whole key of everything. But with a lot of these people, they come into card games and they want to come in and figure out the deck they're going to build and play it, and they don't want to have to be non-stop figuring out how to play the game when they play once every 3 weeks. And they get to play, they spend money and they build a deck to play 3 to 4 times a format total. That's what they know. They know what they're gonna have available.
Yeah.
And when they have to go in and they're gonna spend every deck where they don't know what their opponent's deck's doing in every single one of their 4 tournaments, they're gonna be like, "This is so frustrating because I feel like I can't even fight back because I have to spend time investing to learn what's going on with everyone else before I could even do it." But at the same time, that's just because it leads to a more competitive game, which adds a lot more value to the people who want that competitive. It keeps it more fresh. It adds more ingenuity and more personal touch and flair to everything. So there's a lot of value added, and I don't think it's something you want to sacrifice in a game like this where you're looking for that competitive edge necessarily to get those more casual people in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big positive, I would think, for what Battle Cruise is looking for, if Bandai is trying to push that, which is make it their competitive game where people are going sweaty, people are trying to get into it and really get into it, and they're spending a lot of time invested into it. And they're trying to travel to in-person events, ideally, Cam in the future, but it's their really big pushing point of what they want people to be into if they can help it in the Bandai ecosystem.
No, for sure. Actually, that's a really good point. I did not think about it from kind of that perspective because I'm such a competitive player. So that all I really want is that constant shift of the meta and constantly, constantly develop my side deck, my main deck, teching this, teching that. But I can definitely see where it is kind of daunting, where if meta can fluctuate so much based on what the best players are playing or innovating around the innovation, where it can just be super difficult. So I can see that being kind of like the weighing point, right? Where I think Battle Spirits is staying out of being super casual, but that is also something that hurts its player base and something that can hit the player base as well. But so for everybody in here right now, we all kind of compete in events and things like that. Is everybody in here competing in anything soon? This is going to be kind of the closing question. So this kind of ties everything together. It doesn't matter if it's Battle Spirits, One Piece, or Digimon. Are you guys all competing in anything? And if you're not competing in anything, what's the reason for that? Is that just because there's not like an event for you that is your category of event that you like to play in?
It started off. I mean, I don't really do big events, as most big events in Digimon are webcam.
Mm-hmm.
So but I'm really looking forward to the local meta for just playing BT13 coming out. I'm hoping I can get out to locals tomorrow on a weeknight, which I don't usually get to, along with getting out on Friday for my usual playtime. But I'm looking forward to grinding the set. I'm a really big want to play Royal Knights this set, but also I've got Shine built that I want to play, and there's a lot of other cool decks this format. So I want to also play a lot because I think there's, although, maybe a topic for a different episode, I think there's a very possible chance we could see another ban list similar to what we saw with Crossheart getting hit within a month into the set coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that's necessarily for sure going to happen, but I think it's a lot more likely compared to previous formats we've been seeing, especially with the reaction to Shine in Japan. So I want to make sure I get to try out and play all these fun decks at full power before anything gets hit.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the local level. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
For sure. I know for myself, I can let you guys know, we are gearing up for Gen Con here. So Gen Con kind of comes in two event series where they have an in-person Gen Con that everybody's going to be going to, for a lot of people go to. But then they have their webcam events that were really big signups, and I signed up for Digimon Thursday, One Piece Friday, Digimon Saturday, One Piece Sunday. So it's going to be back-to-back events for me, grinding out BT13 and OPO3 just kind of in general, and really trying to get to a place where I'm in a good place with all my different decks. The thing with BT13 for me is that there's so many decks. I don't know what to play. Am I playing Belphemon? Am I going back to a really strong Grandis list? Am I going to play the new Bloom Lord? Am I going to try, you know what I mean? There's actually so much security controls out there. So a lot to think about. In One Piece, it's a lot more straightforward, right? I just kind of have my decks I can play in that game. But for you, Eric, do you think that, so you said that you don't really do the One Piece online events. Do you think that you would do some, if One Piece or Bandai as a tournament organizer Bandai, Digimon, whichever, just for any of the games that you play. But if they had stores host regionals, kind of like how they did back in the day, do you think that's something that you would go to, like in-person events, like a bigger regional, like 100 and something person event?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't talk about much, but when I played back in the day, I've gone to regionals and states and regionals for Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh back in 07 and 06.
Mm-hmm.
When I was, I was a junior in Pokemon back then. They have age groups in Pokemon. People don't know it, so I played in the youngest division. I had a top 4 at states. Back in the day, there was only 15 people that registered for states and juniors, to be fair, but I got a top 4. Let's make that very clear.
Hey, don't play with Eric's freaking. Don't play with his record.
Self-built deck. Let's make it clear. I got a little trophy for it from my local shop because it was hosted at my locals. Cool. I got a trophy for it and everything. But yeah, I love those events. I love the nationals. If they started doing stuff in Minnesota where we're out of, I would definitely be trying to attend everything in Minnesota. I'm available, and even more some of these, I know I didn't go to Peoria, in Illinois, but I could definitely see myself traveling for some of those Chicago events to do Digimon if it's something that a group of us were doing, and we wanted to make a weekend out of, I probably wouldn't travel by myself for them, but always good to go with a group of people. We've got the Oppas are a nice tight-knit group, so we always have a good time. We do travel for events.
Nice tight group of 45 people in the group chat or something like that.
Our 12 people group at nationals that we're grouping up together and taking over a hallway.
No, for sure. No, I think that that would be interesting, and it's definitely something we're going to talk about in a future podcast. I think that structure for in-person events is something that's really important. But Albert, for you, Tusa, wow, what events are you going to play? You just topped an event, so what else are you going to dominate coming up here soon?
Originally, I signed up for regionals One Piece on Saturday, just so I can get my invite. But since I got it already, I'm not that willing to play.
Must be nice.
I mean, I'll still play it because the prize value is still there, but I'm not like too hardcore for it. Same thing for like Digimon. Prizes for Digimon's kind of like not there, but I would play just because our friends are playing it too, and it's a new format.
Yep, absolutely. And how about you, Matt? You got anything you're planning?
No, I'm just honestly trying to get back into playing into some local things. Yeah, since Ohio, I haven't really stopped in too often, and I do want to get back into Digimon. So I think I'm just gonna start, showing up at the card shop more, just especially with Battle Spirits coming out this new set coming out. Yeah, I'm just trying to go back and see what decks are good and if it's something that piques my interest, because that's just the kind of player I am.
Yep.
It's like if I'm not like interested, I'm just not gonna play. And I feel like I get burnt out. I think I did get burnt out with Ohio. Battle Spirits. I was like, my brain hurts. I haven't thought this hard in so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely like feeling the itch of wanting to play card games again. So probably just stop in soon, and if there's another sign up soon for some online tournaments. But yeah, Tusa makes a good point. Like the prize support is something that it's like, is it worth like my whole day?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's just one of the things that I'm just thinking about more when it comes to my time. But yeah, I am excited to play card games again soon. So
for sure. No, I know that for Battle Spirits, since we're moving to BSSO2, we are moving into a new Grand Open season, which means that there's going to be a new really big 250K tournament for invite only. But this season is going to be rotating over to Europe. So we had US for the first event, set 2. The big tournament's going to take place in Europe, but we're going to have a bunch of events in America still to get your invite. And then rotating into set 3, the Grand Open, I think, is coming back to America. I will also keep you posted so we have some preparation to do, because it's always just fun preparing for tournaments. I think that's one of the things that really gets you about your chair, right? If you have some time, you have some energy, right? Get your deck fine-tuned, get everything ready, get going. So, no, for sure.
Exactly. I'm excited. That sounds exciting.
No, for sure. I think that all the card games right now, Bandai does do a good job at providing us with some competition and stuff, and Locals is thriving, so that's really great. But we're going to wrap up the podcast here. I think that's all the topics and everything. Did anybody have any shout outs before I really get us going?
I mean, shout out to Oppas Gaming.
Hey.
Yeah, shout out.
Best spot for all your Bandai gaming needs.
No, thank you very much, man. But all right, you guys, it's going to be Oppas Gaming as a team, and we are all out. Take care, you guys.
Thanks, everyone.